Now, happy Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, and Spencer Dupuis here with you on this Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. And on this day, the Kansas City Royals are back in the win column anyway. That was good to see. Royals put it together. Little comeback effort. Bobby Witt Jr. off the schneid. We'll get to that win over the Toronto Blue Jays coming up in just a few moments. Elsewhere in this opening hour of the show, some KU basketball roster news. Labaron Philon, second highest ranked prospect in KU's freshman class, asking out. Does not want to come to KU. He's asking out of his letter of intent. What does that mean for the Jayhawks? Also, Reggie Bush has finally, many years too late, never should have been taken in the first place. He got his Heisman Trophy back. What that means, why this was so important, we'll get to that coming up here in this opening hour of the show. 3 o'clock hour today, we'll get to some new K-State roster news as well. One player going portaling, one heading to the NBA draft. We will get to that coming up in the 3 o'clock hour, and we will also get to our 2024 mock drafts. That is right. Each of us has put together a single round, first round, some with trades, some without, a one-round, 32-pick mock draft. We will break them all down. We're going to post them on our website as well, and we will determine who is the king prognosticator. 2 quick notes. 1, I've won 2 of the last 3 years. Hate to brag. Secondly, there are 2 spots in our respective drafts. I was going through them a little bit earlier. There are 2 spots in which we all pick the same player. Same spot, same team, same player. There are 2.
Just 2?
Just 2.
Only 2?
I'm sorry, 3. There are 3. My mistake. 3. Caleb Williams, number 1. We do not need, we can spoil that. Caleb Williams is going number 1 tomorrow night. We all have Marvin Harrison going to the same team. And we all have Adonai Mitchell going to the same team. So remember where you picked him to go, and then realize we all picked him to go to the same spot. We'll tell you where that is, who we think the Chiefs will take, what the rest of the first round will look like coming up in the 3 o'clock hour today. We've got some draft bold predictions. We're going to call some shots in the 4 o'clock hour. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us for the Wildcat Wrap-up. We've got today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. What is wrong with you? One gotta go. It's all coming up today right here on 580 Sports Talk. You know how much we want you to be a part of the show, and you know how to do it, either on the text line. That's the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429, or you can find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. You can also find the video stream for the show on our website, 580wibw.com, on Twitter at 580 Sports Talk, and as also on Facebook at WIBW News. Before we get to the Kansas City Royals returning to their quest for a World Series, would you guys like a keyword for the Choose Your Trip contest?
Oh, let's go. Doesn't do me any good, but our listeners might appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to do something for everyone on the other side of these microphones. Go to our website, 580wibw.com. Click on Choose Your Trip 2024 and enter this keyword between now and 3 o'clock, and you will be entered to win a trip to anywhere you want to go. Hence, Choose Your Trip. Your 2 o'clock hour keyword is comment. COMMENT. Comment, like the thing we want you to do on our YouTube stream. So go enter the keyword comment between now and 3 o'clock at 580wibw.com for the Choose Your Trip 2024 contest. The Kansas City Royals get back in the win column. They end their 3-game losing skid yesterday. And it's kind of funny, as I was thinking about how I wanted to approach this segment and this breakdown today, thinking about how the Royals won the game thanks in large part to the bullpen, who we will get to, and how dominant they were yesterday, and really in general recently. But to talk about, hey, a clutch hit, situational big hit, that was the game winner for the Royals. It's funny to say that because the Royals went a whopping 1 for 13 with runners in scoring position yesterday. 1 hit in 13 tries. Do you know what that percentage is? Do you know what that batting average is, Dan?
Believe that starts with a 0.083 or something like that.
.077.
77.
That is the batting average for the Royals with runners in scoring position last night. But all it took,
12 is 8.3.
Yeah. All it took was the best player on the Kansas City Royals to snap out of a slump. And again, it's baseball, man. This was such a perfect example of that's baseball. This was probably the softest contact Bobby Witt Jr. has made in at least a couple of weeks, if not all season long. only had one ball that qualified as a hard hit. He went 3 for 4 and had the game-winning double. That's baseball. He has been tearing the cover off the ball for a week. He's had a 150 average or whatever in the last 6 games. Then last night, 3 for 4 with, relatively speaking, soft contact. It is what it is. But it's great to see him bounce back in particular because, again, he's the best player on the team. You want to see him step up in the big moments, and he did last night.
It was interesting in the sense that it could have been a much higher scoring game. Probably both teams feel like they left a lot of money on the table. Certainly the Blue Jays, they had base runners against Michael Wacha, who wasn't particularly sharp last night, but could only cash in a couple. The Royals getting more opportunities than you're accustomed to getting against a pitcher of Kevin Gausman's caliber, but again, only really having that one inning where they broke through. But we talked about yesterday the need to snap a streak, and you snap a streak by winning a baseball game. Doesn't matter how. Just get across the finish line, get 27 outs before the other guys do, and score more runs than the other guys in your allotted 27 outs. Just find a way to snap the streak and get a win. And the Royals found a way. They built the inning. Bobby Witt Jr. came through, and then the bullpen came in behind. Wacha did a really outstanding job. Stratton helped clean up a little bit of a mess. Schreiber really good in the 7th. And then I like that Matt Quatrero was aggressive with James McArthur. It had been a few days since McArthur had been on the mound. He's your best guy. I think that's indisputable at this point, that the 9th inning is James McArthur's. Why not see if you can get an extra inning out of him and go win a ball game? At that point, you're saying, I'm using my closer for 2 innings. This is now a 7-inning game. You feel like if I can hand a lead to my closer, I can turn this game into an 8-inning game if you've got a lot of faith in your closer. That's why, again, those championship Royals of the mid-2010s were so successful, because they played 6-inning games because you weren't scoring on the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guys. Now, last night, you had an opportunity to turn a game into a 7-inning ball game and hand it over to James McArthur, and he got the job done cleanly, efficiently in the 8th and the 9th inning. So I liked how Matt Quatrero managed his bullpen last night. I think he's getting the most out of the guys he's got. Still not an overpowering bullpen, but these guys are getting the job done.
I like seeing what we saw from Stratton as well, who, by the way, for as bad as Will Smith has been so far this season,
quite bad.
It has been terrible, in fact. Chris Stratton has been really good. In fact, in 8 of his 10 appearances, he has been downright great. So against the Mets and in the opener against the Twins, in those 2 appearances, Stratton gave up 4 runs on 3 hits and 6 walks. Not good across those 2. In fact, against the Mets, he walked 4 guys alone. In his other 8 outings, that's 9 innings pitched in those other 8 outings, 3 hits, 3 walks, no runs. So aside from 2 appearances, he has been downright dominant so far this year. So while that doesn't completely absolve you of the fact that Will Smith has been bad, because anyone who's out there has to get at least some work at some point, Chris Stratton has been really good. And like we talked about yesterday, when you want to lean on veterans and guys who are not going to get too high, they're not going to get too low, they're going to be steadying forces, they've been there before, they've been winners before, that's the kind of guy that you want to be locked down in the middle of your bullpen if you're the Kansas City Royals. I've been really impressed by what Chris Stratton has been able to do. All things considered, the bullpen has been really good as of late. Really good.
I wanted to say this at the beginning of when you're talking about it, but I was going to keep it for now. Ever since, I feel like, for the most part, we kind of tore them down after the first week.
Yeah,
they've been
their fault. They lost.
Very good.
Yeah, they blew that series in Baltimore. They kind of wore the goat horns as a group.
When I gave you all the numbers for the bullpen compared to the starters, it kind of turned around. I don't know. That's got nothing to do with it, but
you can take the credit for it if you want, though.
I'll take all the credit. Then.
We are absolutely in the business of taking credit for the success of professional athletes. But seriously, that has gone from what appeared to be a massive weakness early in the year, at least over the last 3 weeks or so. That's been a major strength for this team, which has been positive because it's keeping games close when the starting pitching has floundered a little bit and the offense has been cold. In fact, they were cold again last night, all things considered.
Yeah, they really only broke through because Vladimir Guerrero Jr. forgot to do the most important part of a first baseman's job, which is catch the baseball. And if not for that, I don't know how that inning turns out for the Royals, but it certainly doesn't result in a crooked number that allowed them to take the lead for good. They were fortunate, but they capitalized on another team's mistakes. That's the thing that good teams do. You capitalize on a mistake, you make it hurt. You press on the wound and you make it hurt. And that's what the Royals were able to do in that fifth inning, and that's what Bobby Witt Jr. was able to do. I want to go back to the point about the bullpen because you mentioned they only had one strikeout last night in 4 1/3 innings of work. And this has not been, after a really fast start in this department, the first few games against the Twins. And I'd have to look at the Twins' numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but that's been a pretty strikeout-prone lineup the last handful of years. But the Royals, as a pitching staff, do not strike a lot of guys out. This was highlighted. There is a good piece today at ESPN.com. It is not paywalled. You can read it for free by Bradford Doolittle. Pitching, defense, and a budding star, why the red-hot Royals might actually be for real. So it's not just us saying this. This is an outside voice saying, hey, maybe this isn't a fluke. Maybe the Royals are actually kind of decent. And one of the stats that Doolittle points out regarding the strikeout rate of the Royals pitching staff, they're not striking out a lot of guys. They're 24th in the league in strikeout rate, strikeout percentage of batters struck out. So 24th out of 30 teams in the league, and 87% of the Major League Baseball average. So that's relative strikeout rate, which ranks 28th in the league. Either way you slice it, that's not a lot of swing and miss. And that is, of course, the surest way to get guys out that there is to make them swing and miss or to make them watch strike three. You don't involve the defense. You don't run the risk of them hitting it where the defense can't get it, i.e. over the fence. Striking guys out is the most efficient way to have a really good pitching staff. And the Royals, to this point, have not done that. But you know what they have done? Kept it in the ballpark and kept it in the strike zone. They are 5th in baseball in home run rate, and I think that's sustainable more than anything else that the Royals pitching staff is doing, if only because you play at Kauffman Stadium, not typically a home run friendly park. I think that the Royals' ability to limit the long ball is a real thing so far. They're also 10th in the league in walk rate, 10th best out of 30 major league teams in percentage of at-bats for the other team that end in a walk. When you throw strikes and you keep the ball in the ballpark, you give yourself a chance for some better outcomes, because those are the things there's no defense for. Everything else that isn't a strikeout, you involve your defense, and the Royals are a really good defensive team. How good? Doolittle points out they're best in Major League Baseball, or among the best, in defensive runs saved. And no infield in the major leagues has turned more ground balls into outs than the Kansas City Royals. So it is the old adage about trusting your defense. It is the old joke from Bull Durham. Strikeouts are fascist. Throw ground balls. They're more democratic. All of those things. Those things seem to be true about this Royals staff. They are a little too prone to contact to maybe be truly dominant, but you can still get good results if you're keeping the ball in the ballpark, if you're throwing strikes, and if you're trusting your defense to make plays, and then that defense is making plays. And this is a defense great on the infield. I think genuinely great. I do not think that's an exaggeration to say this is a great defensive infield. They have, I believe, an outstanding defensive center fielder in Kyle Isbell and a rapidly improving defensive left fielder in MJ Melendez. I'm not really ready to mail the gold glove to MJ's house or anything like that, but the eye test is starting to show he looks like a bona fide major league outfielder now in a way that he did not in his first 2 years trying the position. So those are the positive signs for this staff, and those are the things that they're going to have to continue to do really well in order to overcome the fact that there's not a lot of power and there's not a lot of swing and miss outside of like Reagan's and MacArthur in this pitching rotation.
The thing that benefits, well, the fact that you can use your stadium to your benefit is going to help out this team. That also leads me to believe that at some point this year on the road in certain ballparks, you are going to have struggles with that. But play to your strengths. I think that's, tell me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I sort of feel like that's the general point here, is just play to what you are good at. If you have an asset, use that asset. What do the Royals have in the field? A good third baseman, a good shortstop, all these positions that you just outlined, guys who can work with their glove, make it work for them. Why not play to it? You don't need to have overpowering stuff in that regard. It's like an accurate version of what Dayton Moore tried to do to build this team for so long. Speed and outfield defense. That's what it's going to be. Now you're using those things. They're a part of what you've built, but I think it's a more usable form of both of those things. It's not just filling up your outfield with a bunch of guys who can't hit, who have great gloves. More Michael A. Taylors, more 3 copies of Kyle Isbell, name any group of guys. But if you are actually working on developing the glove for MJ Melendez, if you're working on Vinny Pasquantino continuing to develop the glove, which he has done, those are things you can improve on. The actual development, you're going to end up in a better spot. And granted, this team is not a finished product. Well, I hope it's not a finished product. I hope there is more growth that this franchise can go through over the next season, into 2 seasons, into 3 seasons, where they can get back into regular playoff contention. But that's a great sign for where you are right now, and it just speaks volumes to how well this front office and this coaching staff and all the way down into the minor leagues, everyone who's with the big league club, etc., how well they have done to continue to improve these guys, improve what they do in their tactics, but also to help the players improve themselves. That is the biggest stark difference for me for this team compared to last year and really the last generation of Royals baseball, is that it looks like they have clearly put in work that has changed things. We didn't go from first weekend of October last year all the way through the offseason, through spring training, into the first month of this season, and everybody was the exact same guy. Because frankly, that's what it looked like year for year with the Royals, and why it really felt hard to get excited, at least for someone like myself, to get excited, because under the previous regime, and I know I keep burying Dayton Moore, and it's probably not completely fair, but why should I have had belief that MJ Melendez was going to get better? Why should I have had expectations or belief that Vinny was going to go from a slight negative first baseman in the field to actually quite a good first baseman in the field, that they would improve in certain areas, that they would make strides at the plate? There wasn't a whole lot of belief in that. I feel like there's a better reason now to think that's going to keep happening.
And that's underlined in Doolittle's article at ESPN.com. This quote from JJ Picollo. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this article, and if you get a moment to read it today at ESPN.com, I recommend you do so. But we have discussed that it was not an accident that the Royals, when they revamped their coaching staff, brought in coaches who'd been around not just winning organizations, but organizations that had won and done so with an analytically minded frame of thought from the front office down to the dugout. And Dayton Moore was maybe never going to change his spots. The hope was that JJ Picollo and the people in charge of the Royals in that front office might be a little bit more pliable when it comes to accepting a more analytical point of view in their dugout, in their coaching staff. This is the quote from Picollo talking about both Quatrero and Brian Sweeney. They represented something different than I had been around in the past. There are more objective decisions being made, more reliant on data. It was really evident to us in spring training that we were going to have to really beef up our analytical department to keep up with what their demands were. And it was somewhat uncomfortable at times, but the way Q works and the way he communicates made it easier to digest. End of quote. That sort of makes last year make sense as sort of the evaluation year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, what do we have? How can we work together with a front office that has tended to be a little bit more old school? And now, year 2, we have the data. We have an understanding of our guys, who they are as people, how we have to convey this information to them, a front office that is more pliable now. And now we can start to do things our way being Matt Quatrero, being Brian Sweeney. And you're seeing that be really successful. James MacArthur is a success story of development.
Mm-hmm.
Cole Reagans is a success story, even though these guys came to the organization just last year. Success stories in terms of, we're going to help make you better. We're going to develop you as a player. MJ Melendez has improved defense. Michael Garcia's improved power. Those are all points of evidence that the Royals are different now in a really meaningful way that's going to reap some benefits in the long term.
I think, too, you're not perfect. Like, clearly last night's game was far from perfect.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get those wins, stack things up, you will improve game over game no matter what, but you don't want to put yourself in a hole. And sometimes you get lucky. Last night was one of them. You just need to focus on the next game and say, we got to be better. We got to hit better with runners in scoring position. We got to do everything better, basically, in order to really win a game.
And again, I think it's good that it's not a position where you just feel like you had to get lucky to win that game. I mean, it's a matter of process. I was joking about Bobby Witt Jr. having his softest contact of the year. Hardest hit ball for him in the game was the double that ended up winning it, that had the go-ahead run score. So it's all of these things kind of coalescing and coming together. And real quick, Dan, to the point you made, just better talent evaluation too. I mean, how many dudes did the Royals bring in who you had never heard of, who left as quickly as they came? Like, you had to be a real baseball nerd, probably saying that in a derogatory way, to know much about James McArthur before last year, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that was nobody who was on anybody's radar.
But they
found him.
And they got him on purpose.
Yes.
Like, that was a guy they said, we want him because our scouts see something and our coaches see something, and we think we can turn that into a useful bullpen piece. And right now, he is their best relief pitcher.
It's working intentionally. It is being intentional with what you want to do, what you want to improve on. And the Royals have done a better job of that so far this year than they have since they were winning the World Series middle of last decade. We'll talk some more Royals baseball a little bit later on in the show as we get ready for Game 3 between the Royals and Blue Jays tonight. Alec Marsh will be on the bump for the boys in blue. Right now, though, we have to get to a commercial break, and when we come back, Reggie Bush finally got his Heisman Trophy back. Plus, Labaron Philon has asked out of his national letter of intent to KU. What does that mean for Jayhawks basketball? We'll get to all that in this opening hour of 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting started on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us a little bit later on today. Talk some K-State. We'll talk some K-State just ourselves in the 3 o'clock hour. Busy day roster-wise, and not necessarily in a good way for K-State, but it's all spin zone. Maybe you can spin this as it's going to be great that a couple of Wildcats announced today that they're leaving, because maybe they're going to bring in even better players. We're going to get to that coming up a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk some
one's
KU hoops
future's
too.
Also unclear. Kind of cloudy, unless something new has come out since I last checked.
Which player are you referring to?
Kaluma. Kind of cloudy. He hasn't really said.
Yeah. Look, this isn't a report. This is just opinion. I would, at this point, be shocked if Arthur Kaluma came back. He could. He did not say I'm for sure not coming back, but I would be pretty surprised if he did. I'm kind of surprised it took this long for him to announce he's leaving, to be honest with you. We'll get to more of this, though, in the 3 o'clock hour. Plenty to discuss coming up when it comes to K-State basketball and KU basketball later on this hour. I did want to get to this, though. Major story today, and this happened. I'm sure it took a longer time behind the scenes, but publicly very quickly. Reggie Bush got his Heisman Trophy back. Finally, 14 years after the Heisman Trust, frankly, stole back his Heisman Trophy. They have, quote unquote, reinstated the trophy to Reggie Bush amid what the Heisman Trust is calling, guys, quote, enormous changes in the college football landscape. In other words, what Reggie Bush got in trouble for in 2005, he could have just, what happened in 2005 anyway, he could very really have had done legally nowadays, and no one would think any different. He could do an advertisement for Remax and could have gotten a house for it, and could have gotten a car for doing a little NIL deal with a car dealership. Like, that's all. It's all above board. It is all legal and fine now. So one of the greatest college football players of all time. I saw someone on Twitter today say, Reggie's like maybe in the top 100, right? Nah, dude, Reggie Bush is one of the greatest. I don't know if you want to go 10, 20, 50, whatever.
I'd say top 15.
If you're just saying, generally speaking, one of the best to ever do it, you include Reggie Bush because he is. And I say that openly admitting in 2004, 2005, that's around when I was really getting into college football. And I like 03 to 05 or so, like when I was really getting into it when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I hated USC. I hated them so much. I rooted against them in every single game. One of the most intense cheers thing I ever gave early in my life for a college football game was listening to the radio when Vince Young scored the winning touchdown in the Rose Bowl in one of the greatest games ever played.
That's still the greatest college football game I've ever seen.
I hated Pete Carroll and Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Dwayne Jarrett and everyone else who was on those teams.
That's wild. I loved those teams.
Oh my, I hated. Like,
I bought a Reggie Bush Saints jersey, man. I was a huge Reggie Bush fan.
I think the only team I hated more than USC at the time was the Minnesota Vikings and the 2005 North Carolina Tar Heels basketball team. Those are the only two.
I didn't go out on a Saturday night when I was in college, obviously. I did not go out on a Saturday night so I could watch USC play Fresno State. Like that play.
The behind the back game.
Yes. That play I remember vividly.
I remember
thinking everybody at ATO is missing out.
I was
They're
so
not
mad.
seeing Reggie Bush in his pomp making dudes miss.
If you thought hard enough, I could have done it too. You just put the ball behind your back. It's fine. No, he was incredible. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. This was such a joke that they took it away in the first place. The whole idea that you can retroactively take things away is outrageous. It happened. We were there. We all experienced it.
I remember being, 12-ish, around the age of 12, really confused at how they could do that. Like, not fully grasping what had happened.
Just trying to change history that we've all experienced. You can see those highlights everywhere. Every college football montage on YouTube, I think I've watched every single one of them, features Reggie Bush and that crazy touchdown run we were just referencing, where he put the ball behind his back and cut back along the far sideline against Fresno State. We watched it all happen. It's the same thing with taking away wins. It always sticks in my head when they reinstated the wins, or when they originally took them away at Penn State. Penn State obviously deserved intense punishment for the Jerry Sandusky scandal. Obviously, some sort of book should have been thrown at them for that. Taking away wins, man, We all saw it. I can't remember which player it was, but tweeted at the time when that all happened. You can't tell me that these games never happened, because I remember October 14th, whatever year, I broke my neck in a game we won. You're going to tell me that I now didn't break my neck? Oh, great. Awesome. No, they happened. Reggie Bush did that.
Yeah.
That's why it was always embarrassing, too, when Vince Young said, they should give it to me. No, you lost it.
Yeah.
You finished second. Congrats on being the runner-up. You want the pity Heisman?
You got the national championship. You got a nice little consolation prize as far as that goes. You were the best player in the greatest game ever played. Like, you got yours. You got your lick back in the BCS championship game.
One of the greatest football highlights ever. Scampering into the end zone, that little leap as he got to the corner.
Keith Jackson and Dan Fouts on the call. Man, return. Take me
I
back.
miss Keith.
Take me back. And I don't just mean Keith Jackson and Dan Fouts. I mean to the BCS.
Well, yes, I agree with you on that, too.
Anyway.
What a way for Keith Jackson to end his career, by the way.
Yeah, it was. It was his last game. That's wild to think about. So
Life's only gotten worse.
I love this. I mean, in some ways, in many ways, you could argue. The statement from the Heisman Trust about the changes that have occurred in college sports that make it absolutely unconscionable to withhold the Heisman Trophy from Reggie Bush. Like, those conditions were always in place, right? It was always pretty immoral to have the amateur model still held up in college sports. Like, amateurism was the reason that college sports, that's what drew people to college sports, was the amateurism model, the student athlete model. Look, I don't think this is a terribly controversial thing to say. If your labor makes millions of dollars for people, you ought to get a cut. Not a room to a roof over your head, not some classes. You should get a cut if you're making billions for other people, not just millions. College athletics, college football in particular, became $1 billion industry, and we were still telling the labor they couldn't make any money off of it. But here are some classes. Put those in your gas tank. Here's some books. Eat those when you're hungry. Like, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say, that if you make millions of dollars, like, and that goes for anybody. I'm not just talking about football players ages 18 to 22. I'm talking about anybody. If your labor makes money for someone else, you should get a cut. And college athletics were the only thing, the only industry where we were like, I don't know. Well, I don't know about that.
I mean, even beyond that, truthfully, why should I care that he got a house, that his parents got a house? Why do I need to care? Like, other schools couldn't pay up. Well, maybe they should have.
Yeah.
Maybe
Notre Dame should have paid more money to get Reggie Bush. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't have won a national championship. Maybe they wouldn't have lost the Bush push.
It's just hard for me to care about something that has been happening for 100 years. It was happening for 100 years before Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
I've shared this before. My mom loves old movies, loves watching Turner Classic Movies. And I remember one time walking into the basement, she was watching one. They were playing football. It was some, fake college. It was fantasy. It was college football. And the whole gist of the story was that the star running back for some team was getting paid under the table. This movie was made in like 1936. It's been happening forever. And again, as we've talked about for years and years and years and years on this very show, you know who could have fixed this at any point? The NCAA. Instead, they let it get to a point where now everyone loves to use the phrase the Wild West. This is unsustainable. One, I don't agree because no one can really explain what unsustainable means in that context. But two, I disagree that it's the Wild West. This is a self-contained environment that the NCAA created.
Yeah.
They were willing to allow this to happen, instead just sitting on their hands doing nothing for 100 years.
Well, that was like, I always thought that. And then when this is in college basketball, when the Penny Hardaway thing came out where he paid for the players, what was it, his family to move to Memphis?
Yeah, that was Wiseman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
James Wiseman.
Yeah, they were family friends.
Like, excuse me, what? Like, I never understood that.
Of all things, a local example, Larry Brown. What Larry Brown got in trouble for at Kansas. Now, Larry Brown, over the course of his career, got in trouble for things far more bigger issues than what he got in trouble for at KU. Paying for a plane ticket for a kid to go see his family. What are we doing? What is the point of all of
Rick
this?
Majerus got in trouble for buying a kid a bagel. Like,
yes.
Having to tell one of his players that his dad had died, I think it was, and so he bought him breakfast.
The kids who got in trouble, who was it? Michigan? It was during the Harbaugh era. I think it was Michigan. Kids got in trouble for eating too much at Olive Garden at a team meal. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember.
What's the point?
When I was in college, I lived with cross-country runners for Marshall, right? And they were like, yeah, technically, like, we can't ride with you to go places because you're not also a cross-country member, and that goes against
that's an impermissible benefit.
Yeah. And I was like, what? So, like, literally, like, somebody on their team had gotten in trouble for it because they needed to find somebody at Marshall at some point that wasn't, like a football or a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
So they scapegoated, like, cross-country at one point.
It's an outmoded model, and it has been for years, and we accept that. We've accepted that when it comes to the Olympics, because those were the two things that were built on the amateur model, the Olympics and college athletics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the Olympics, we lost to the Russians in basketball, and we decided, nah, we can't do this anymore. We got to get the dream team in here. We got to let the pros play. And has the participation of athletes who are compensated for their work, whether that be they are currently professionals or they have endorsements, has that made the Olympics worse? No, it's made them even bigger. It's made the TV contracts even bigger. It's made the bidding process, the bidding wars to host the Olympics that much more expensive. Does Reggie Bush getting a house or some player getting a car or some player getting a $50,000 handshake? That's quite a elaborate handshake, I guess. There's no like $50,000 bill, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make college football worse? Does it make college football, college basketball a worse product? You can argue the merits of the transfer portal. You can argue that it was a little easier to be a college sports fan when you could tell the players without a scorecard and you knew guys were going to be in the same school for 3 years or 4 years. And I'm sympathetic to that argument. But more people are watching college sports than ever have before. More people are going to college games, Division I games than ever before. The TV contracts are bigger than they have ever been. This stuff is more popular than ever. Going away from the amateur model and saying these young men and women can profit off of their name, image, and likeness, can profit off of their abilities, are worth what the market will bear. That has not ruined college athletics. It has not. You cannot argue that it has. You can argue it is a different fan experience, certainly, but you cannot argue that it is ruined. You cannot argue that it is worse, and it certainly is not any less lucrative for the major shareholders.
I mean, you can argue it if you want. I just don't think it makes any sense.
You can't win the argument.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I have no problem with it. This never should have happened. They never should have taken the trophy in the first place. It was ludicrous when it happened. And again, I hated Reggie Bush. I always did. But let's be honest with ourselves. This should have happened. Never should have happened in the first place 14 years ago. Coming up next, speaking of college sports, we'll get to some KU basketball. The Jayhawks are losing one of their top-ranked freshmen in the incoming class for 24-25. What does Labaron Philon wanting out mean for KU? We'll break it down after this on 580 Sports Talk. broke last night, I want to say a little after 8, right around 8 o'clock maybe, that Labaron Philon, one of the highly touted freshmen for Kansas basketball in the 24 class, is asking out of his National Letter of Intent, his NLI, not to be confused with NIL. I do that constantly now. Number 32 ranked player in the class, according to 24/7 Sports. That's the second highest ranking for a KU player. Flory Badunga is number 11 in the class. Rakese Passmore is number 50. First things first, because this always elicits a response, many of them negative, not all, but some negative toward the player. I do not blame Labaron Philon. I do not. I was excited because I liked his game. I saw a little bit of what he did in his final high school game of the season just a few weeks ago, game that was on ESPN2. He was the best player on the floor for his program, and I thought, dang, there's some real skill here as a combo guard that I'm really excited to see suit up eventually in the Crimson and Blue. He's been recruited over multiple times in the transfer portal. Sometimes, if it's a one-year guy, a Zeke Mayo, okay, it's a developmental year. I'll address again next summer. But then, like the Rylan Griffin recruitment, and there have been other guards. There's reports out there that Javon Small, formerly of Oklahoma State, is a guy who might get on a visit with KU at some point, that they've talked to him already. Probably feel like, hey, look, guys with multiple years of eligibility left. I have multiple years of eligibility. I don't want to sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to go somewhere where I can play, and I have a hard time blaming him. I wanted to see him play for KU, but if you're getting recruited over, why stay? I get it. You just hope for this freshman class now that Badunga and Passmore, both of whom were considered more to be developmental prospects, specifically Badunga, who's got all the natural gifts in the world, but now is a little bit more athlete than basketball player, that they believe in the vision and that in 2 seasons, they'll be ready to go as contributors as sophomores.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
This is just part of the system. This is kind of how things work for programs like Kansas, where the expectation is to win a championship every year. You win in modern college basketball with veterans. You don't win with freshmen. So yes, you need to be able to develop guys. You need to have multi-year developmental players, Elmarco Jacksons, your Jamari McDowell's, your program guys is what we call those.
Mm-hmm.
We've always called them program guys.
Yep.
But sometimes that means you're going to recruit over the freshman that you're bringing in, and that's what's happened to Labaron Philon. And he's good enough probably to play right away for somebody, and it's just the fact that somebody is not Kansas.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Spencer?
I said that's a good point, but I also think something that you touched on with Swain yesterday, well, I guess Swain talked about it, was Riley Kugel hasn't signed yet.
So there's the other big thing here.
So does Philon not coming impact maybe him actually signing? Like, is there a question there? Like,
so I'm not going to give away paid reporting here. I would advise you go, again, if you're a 24/7 subscriber, go check out Swain's writing on this. That has no bearing on Riley Kugel. Based on everything I have read or been told or heard, I do not expect Riley Kugel to be a Kansas Jayhawk. There are academic issues, not like he can't read. I just mean it is hard to transfer. Like, some schools, it is very easy to transfer in. Some schools, it is very easy to transfer out. Michigan, notably, incredibly hard to transfer into. That's not for athletes. That's for everyone. It is really hard.
And it cost him Caleb Love last year. When Caleb Love was committed out of North Carolina, he was committed to Michigan. He couldn't qualify.
It also cost them TJ Shannon.
That's right, yeah.
Who, by all accounts, is a smart kid and had good grades, off the court notwithstanding. Like, couldn't get in. It is really hard. Elijah Martin from Florida Atlantic, his coach, Dusty May, is now at Michigan. He transferred to Florida because he couldn't get into Michigan. Like, it's hard to do that. What I have heard, what I have read, is that there is some sort of credit hang up with Riley Kugel that's going to make it
I was
difficult.
just going to make that point. I know from a personal point of view, so when I was covering Shepherd, Tyson Bagent had offers to go to West Virginia redshirt a year, go to Maryland redshirt a year after he won the Harlan Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He took those visits, went through everything, but realized that redshirt year would actually mean taking all the other class. Like, he would revert an actual academic class.
Yeah.
Not just getting another year of eligibility and getting a grad degree. It would be reverting an academic year.
And who wants to do that? So I get it. I hope he shows up because I'm excited about the athleticism by Riley Kugel. I hope he makes it. It just sounds like that's going to be tough at this point. Here's the thing, though, to wrap up the point you already made, Dan, about you win with veterans now, because I've seen a lot of people, Michael and I talked about this a little bit when he was on yesterday, is people will say, oh, well, what about this freshman? Like Liam McNeely. Remember that name came up a whole bunch, and it seemed for a while like KU's in the driver's seat. That's over. That's not happening. Liam McNeely's not coming to KU. Sounds like UConn is probably the move for him. Feels like a good fit for everybody. And I saw someone on the message boards yesterday say, well, why not? Why? He's a freshman. He's a good shooter. He could probably challenge for minutes right away. Again, what just happened to Labaron Philon is he got recruited over in the portal. And if Bill Self or any other coach thinks, I can either bring in a freshman who's going to take time to develop, who we think will probably be pretty good, or we can bring in a guy who we know is good. Who would you rather have for 2024-25? This is all hypothetical. Liam McNeely, who may contribute, or Rylan Griffin, who was a full-time starter for a Final Four team? I'm taking Rylan Griffin, and I'm taking him every single time.
Here's the other question. How many true freshmen contributed in a major way to teams that were legitimate national title contenders this year?
That's a great question.
Stephon Castle at UConn, who's going to be a
lottery pick,
top 5 pick in the draft. Jacoby Walter at Baylor. Well, I don't know if they were a legitimate contender, but he was one of their best players, and he's going to go in the lottery.
Or a good program, yeah.
Who else you got? You win now with veterans. And look, Kansas could go into next year and bring back everybody that was going to come back, like Hunter and KJ and DeJuan Harris, and have El Marco and Philon and Passmore and Badunga and just a regular old recruiting class. And that team probably wins 20 games, probably in the mix for the NCAA tournament, might even contend for a Big 12 championship. That's not the standard at Kansas. The standard is win the national championship. How do you do that? Veterans. That's what's happening here.
And KU, as we talked about with Michael yesterday, Rylan Griffin is still very hopeful on that one. Javon Small, who I just mentioned. We talked about Kobe Brea and his ridiculous Final Five of KU, UConn, North Carolina, Duke as well. All the blue blood schools along with Kansas. If you can land those 3 guys, not a guarantee, but shoot, if you can land 2 of them, including Griffin, you're a national title contender right away. Something Philon, as much as I wish he was still around, probably wasn't going to help doing in 24-25. Let's get to a break. Our 2024 mock drafts are next on 580 Sports Talk. It's the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis joining you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Final full-length show of the week. Be on late tomorrow after the Royals-Blue Jays finale. That game is a 1:10 first pitch. Then a 12:10 first pitch in Detroit coming up on Friday. Day baseball on a Friday, the way God intended it to be played.
Thank you, NFL Draft, for making that possible. / necessary.
Yeah.
None of this hedonistic night baseball. Really, the sinful form of the beautiful game. So, Royals baseball, daytime the next 2 days. There is a night game tonight against Toronto. That game will start at 6:40 with a 6 o'clock pregame start time here on 580 WIBW. We'll preview that game coming up a little bit later on in the show today. Plenty of NFL draft to get to. We will have our mock drafts, each of us with a full first-round mock draft. We will get to those coming up here in just a few seconds. We've also this hour got one gotta go and some roster changes for K-State basketball today. RJ Jones to the portal, Arthur Kaluma to the draft. What does it mean? Is Kaluma going to stick in the draft? We'll get to all of that, what the shakedown will look like for K-State coming up in just a little bit. Your texts are welcome on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. And you can find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. Your 3 o'clock hour keyword is here for the Alpha Media Choose Your Trip contest. Head to 580WIBW.com. You will see our video stream right there on the front of the page. But then go one link down and you will see Choose Your Trip 2024. Between now and 4 o'clock, you can enter the following keyword for your chance to win a trip to anywhere you want to go. Your keyword is share. 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 So enter that keyword, share, at 580WIBW.com. Free to enter the Alpha Media Choose Your Trip 2024 contest. We have gone through so many mock drafts over the last few weeks. So many mock drafts already this week as we get ready for the first round of the NFL draft coming up tomorrow night. 7 o'clock is the official start time. First pick's probably not going to be made until 7:15, 7:20. It's going to be Caleb Williams of USC going to the Chicago Bears. We are all in agreement on that. We've got now for you our mock drafts for 2024. If you want to play along, you can go find these on our website, 580WIBW.com. They are all posted there in nice, neat little tables. You can go find our mock drafts, play along, and then you will also be able to see me once again win the championship for the best draft prognosticator on 580 Sports Talk. It's happened 2 of the last 3 years. No big deal. Who's here to brag? Let's get to our picks. I will go first. I mentioned earlier, we all have 3 players going to the exact same team in the exact same spot. It starts with Caleb Williams, number 1, quarterback. He's going to the Bears. Number 4, we've all got Marvin Harrison Jr., best wide receiver in the class, best non-quarterback in the class.
Yeah, that to me, I was sitting on that pick and saying, do they trade it? Do they get a good offer from, a team wanting to move up and maybe a JJ McCarthy?
I mean, Arizona's got plenty of holes.
Or do they get the best wide receiver in the draft where they need a wide receiver to see if, hey, maybe their quarterback, if he has legit talent, the Cardinals' first legit talent at wide receiver since Larry Fitzgerald, then maybe Kyler Murray could be their quarterback.
Yeah. No more excuses for Kyler Murray at that point, right?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I agree. I like Kyler Murray, but yeah, you're 100% right. No excuses there. We also all have A.D. Mitchell going 28th overall to the Buffalo Bills. All of the mixing and matching in the middle of the draft, but number 28 overall, we all have A.D. Mitchell to Buffalo. It makes too much sense if he's there.
Yeah, we all kind of think he'll be the best receiver on the board when the Bills pick. So that's who the Bills will probably pick.
Yeah, that's
unless they're really in love with like Lad McConkey or something. And I don't think
if I was Josh Allen, I'd freak out. I'm not as down on him as you are. I know, Spencer, you like McConkey a lot. If I'm Josh Allen and I need instant playmaker receivers and Brandon Beane took Lad McConkey, I'd freak out. I really would. All right, the rest of my first round mock for you. I am differing from you guys with the 2nd and 3rd overall pick. This is my Fulton Caster Memorial Cognitive Dissonance pick for you. I have Drake May going 2nd. I refuse to believe in NFL front office like Shaden Daniels over Drake May. I refuse to do it. I don't see it. And if I'm wrong, I wish the best for Jaden Daniels. I am not rooting against him. I don't think he is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I do not see it. I cannot get that tweet out of my mind. He is skinny Justin Fields with a worse arm. I just cannot see it. I think Drake May, maybe he doesn't work out either. I think he's a much better prospect. I think Washington has been throwing up smoke screens, and they're going to take Drake May. Spencer, I know you don't want a UNC quarterback. I apologize. So I've got Daniels then going third in New England. I didn't make any trades. You guys both had trades in yours. I did not. I've got Joe Alt, the tackle, going fifth to the Chargers. I think wide receiver makes sense. Malik Neighbors makes tons of sense. You know what else makes sense for a team that just hired Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator? Lineman. Beefy lineman. I've got J.J. McCarthy sixth to the Giants. That's where he finally goes. I have a ton of offensive tackles. I think I counted 9 offensive tackles in my class. Olu Fashanu going seventh, Tennessee.
That's the word, is that a lot of teams want offensive tackles in this draft, and a lot of teams might be willing to trade up to get the guy they want.
Hey, man, I get it. I'll tell you right now, my last pick, Chiefs, number 32, I have them with Jordan Morgan from Arizona. I think he's the best offensive tackle left on the board when I had them picking at 32. Jordan Morgan most years would probably be considered one of the better tackle prospects. This year, he's like 10th. There are so many good ones out there. So I think the Chiefs will go tackle eventually. Where I have the other wide receivers going, Rome Odunze, 9 to Chicago. It makes too much sense. He and Caleb Williams have already been working out together. I have Neighbors falling. I have him all the way to 10. I think he'll be the third wide receiver taken. I think the Bears like Odunze enough. Neighbors ends up with the Jets. That's a good situation. You get to go play next to Garrett Wilson and catch passes from Aaron Rodgers. Pretty nice there. Earliest 2 defensive players I've got, Dallas Turner, I think, is probably the best edge rusher in the class. He's the best athlete of the edge rushers. He's going to go 8th for me to Atlanta. I'm not the only one who picked that. We'll get to that in a moment. Also, Quinion Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo. I have him 11th to Minnesota. Brock Bowers ends up in Denver if they don't go quarterback. If they don't trade up to make a play for McCarthy or trade back and go get Nix or Penix, get an offensive playmaker. They need one badly. And I think Brock Bowers is the best one available. Other wide receivers I have going, Brian Thomas, the other LSU receiver. I have him to Indianapolis. Spencer, if I'm not mistaken, you also have that. Brian Thomas to Indy at number 15.
Yes, I do.
Additionally, told you A.D. Mitchell going to Buffalo with the 28th overall pick. And I think that's it for my wide receivers who I have going off the board. I don't have Ladd McConkey. I don't have Xavier Worthy. I know both of you guys have Xavier Worthy there. Your other edge rushers, Laitu Latu from UCLA. I have him as a Seahawk. Yay or nay?
Yay. I would be excited about that pick.
Yep. I thought that was a good fit. And I've got Jared Verse going to Los Angeles, the Rams. I love Jared Verse. I think he's going to be a stud. I really do. Other notable ones here, Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I listed him on the website when I posted these as just defensive back. He could play corner. He could play nickel. He could play strong or free safety. He can do anything. I think he's going to be a stud. And Philly needs help everywhere in their secondary. Their whole secondary needs to be fixed. So Cooper DeJean makes a whole lot of sense there. I got Bo Nix going in the first round. I'm the only one. I thought someone else was going to have him. I'm the only one who'd put Bo Nix in the first round because I don't have Minnesota making a trade. I have them taking him at their 23. I wouldn't, but they need a quarterback.
They do need a quarterback.
Also, my Packers, Graham Barton from Duke. I just think that's way too good of a fit. Kool-Aid McKinstry gets drafted back-to-back with Nate Wiggins from Clemson at 26 and 27. I think Chop Robinson does get drafted in the first round. I have him 29th to the Detroit Lions. Rounding out Tyler Guyton, the project tackle to Baltimore. Oklahoma Sooners, gigantic 6'8" offensive tackle. Does that sound like someone else the Baltimore Ravens have drafted in the last decade? Like Orlando Brown Jr., a guy who has the exact same body type and pretty much the same questions coming out of college. Sounds like a Raven. And I've got a Michigan man, Mikey Sanders, still going 31st to the 49ers.
I talked about how much I like him yesterday, and I think he'd be a really good fit in San Francisco, but I think he'd be a good fit anywhere. I think he'd be a great locker room guy in addition to being a really good player.
He's a dog.
He is. I don't think he's a first rounder, but whoever gets him is going to be really happy.
One other one I do want to point out because I think they are the second best team in the AFC. I've got Byron Murphy going to Cincinnati at 18. And that's one that's just, it makes too much sense. They have a desperate need. I think Murphy, he's bigger than Johnny Newton. I do love Johnny Newton as a player from Illinois. But I think Murphy probably goes first since he could use size. I think he ends up going there. I think my favorite pick from my mock this year, I do like Johnny Newton going to Dallas, honestly. We talked about that yesterday, Spencer. I think you brought it up. Dallas, who the hell is going to play defensive line for them? You had Johnny Newton to that group. That's a big win. I like Graham Barton to Green Bay a whole lot. And outside of that, honestly, I kind of like my Seahawks pick. I like Latu to Seattle. They need dudes who can get after the quarterback regularly, and I think Latu can be that guy. So that is my first round mock draft for you. Favorite pick, least favorite pick, something you hate, anything like that?
I really like Sanders to late first round. Like I just like the player, even if I disagree that he's a first rounder. Least favorite, I think Bo Nix in the first round. That's not happening. I think he will go early round 2. I think somebody will move up early round 2.
That's my thought on that too.
Him and Penix, I think, are going to be off the board pretty early day 2, but I don't see that in the first round.
End up in the Derek Carr spot, like those first 5 picks in the second round.
The Andy Dalton spot. Yeah,
I can see it. Yeah, Andy Dalton. Was he the first pick of the second round?
Yes, I believe he was.
That's what I thought. All right, Dan, you are up next.
All right, Caleb Williams up front, just like everybody else. And then I have Jaden Daniels going number 2. Over at FanDuel, Jaden Daniels is minus 600 to be the number 2 overall pick. Don't overthink this. The odds earlier this week, by the way, were like minus 120, and Drake May had moved to plus 105.
Well, he also had a media scrum somewhere, and
Jaden Daniels did?
Yeah. And he basically did the whole denial of being mad.
Oh, and essentially was like, no, I'm not upset about having to meet with the other quarterback. I'd love to play
for Washington. I'd love to play for any team that draft me. I hope I can go as high as possible.
Damage control.
So the odds have moved heavily back into Jaden Daniels' favor. So this is just me kind of reading the tea leaves and reading the which way the wind is blowing out in the desert. Jaden Daniels, number 2 to Washington. Drake May, number 3, and Marvin Harrison, number 4. I have 2 trades in the first round. My first trade, Minnesota moves up 6 spots to get J.J. McCarthy. They have to get a quarterback in this draft. They have to get one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. I think they're going to try like hell to get to 3 and get May. And if they can't, they're going to move to 5 and get McCarthy. I think McCarthy's a really good fit for Kevin O'Connell's offense. And I think I think that is as good a place for McCarthy to go for him to be successful is Minnesota in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I have them.
They'll have weapons.
Yes. So I have them trading 11 and 23 for 5 and some other details.
Trading with the Chargers.
Trading with the Chargers. Yes. So McCarthy to Minnesota at number 5. Malik Neighbors to the Giants. Joe Alt to the Titans. First offensive tackle off the board. Like you, I have Dallas Turner 8 to Atlanta. Roma Dunze 9 to Chicago. Another offensive tackle, Talise Fuaga to the Jets at number 10. At 11, the Chargers take Brock Bowers. What does Jim Harbaugh love? Tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Loves him a tight end. And he can get the best one on the board at number 11. Broncos go Jared Verse out of Florida State. They just need impactful defensive players.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Verse, and I've seen him up at 12 in some mock drafts. So we'll go Jared Verse to the Broncos at 12. Quinyon Mitchell, the corner, to the Raiders at 13. Olu Fashanu at 14 to the Saints. Terrion Arnold, cornerback, Alabama, to the Colts. I have my Seahawks taking Troy Fatuanu, the offensive tackle from Washington. He'll probably play guard. The Seahawks need guards. It's an unsexy pick, but it's one they need to make.
Sounds very Seahawks.
Yes, it does. Actually, no, very Seahawks would be for them to draft Audric Estime right there at 16. Or like Peyton Wilson. The linebacker.
NC State, yeah.
NC State, who's a National Defensive Player of the Year and has 0 good knees. Anyway,
got to replace Jordan Brooks.
I was reading an ESPN column about him, and they basically said, yeah, he's a guy you draft and you don't think he's going to make it to a second contract. And not because he'll be a bad player, just like physically.
Yeah.
He may not be able to hold up and get to a second contract. Yeah, not great. Not what you want. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle to Jacksonville, 17. An O lineman for the Bengals, J.C. Latham, big offensive tackle. I don't know if you can trust Trent Brown for 17 games. I think they need to think about the future at that spot.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, because Orlando Brown's under contract, but Trent Brown only has a 1-year deal.
Yeah, it's just a 1-year deal for him. So J.C. Latham, long-term starting tackle there for the Bengals at 18. Latu to the Rams at 19. Amarius Mims to the Steelers. They always need O-line help.
Yes, they do.
And they get a project, but one with a really high ceiling in Mims at number 20. Johnny Newton is the Christian Wilkins replacement in Miami at number 21. My pick for the Eagles in the defensive backfield is Kool-Aid McKinstry at number 22. You know, Howie Roseman, typically it's Georgia guys, but he loves SEC defenders. He's got a team full of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think he goes and gets another one in McKinstry. The Chargers, with their second first-round pick, they get Nate Wiggins out of Clemson to play defensive back. And then my second trade, the Chiefs move up to number 24. The draft board falling in a favorable fashion. I forget who it was one of the friends of the program, might have been Matt Verderam, who suggested that this was something that they ought to consider if this player is on the board. The Chiefs move up 8 spots from number 32 to number 24, and they take Brian Thomas out of LSU.
I like it. You've got a lot of burst, a lot of yak ability with Brian Thomas. He's a true outside guy, little slight of build, but that's fine. You can live with that. Do you know what you had to give up to do this?
32 in the 3rd rounder.
That's it.
It worked.
Yes.
I would probably do that too.
I had a couple failed trades.
I would probably do that. And I think we talked about this yesterday doing one of the mock draft. I think it was Jordan Reed's mock draft we were talking about. I would probably then, if I was the Chiefs, trade out of that 2nd round pick, try to add a little bit more.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't be surprised anyway if they did.
Yeah.
But no, I would probably do that.
Trade back into the early 3rd, and that might be what they end up doing there.
To get Thomas or Mitchell, I would be willing to make that trade.
Yeah, I would too. And with Thomas, the best receiver, I think he's pretty clearly wide receiver 4, and I have Mitchell wide receiver 5 in the draft. Wide receiver 4 is there, 24. Go get him before Buffalo can. If you're the Chiefs. So
okay.
Brian Thomas to the Chiefs at 24. Graham Barton to the Packers, just like your draft.
Love it.
At 25. Xavier Worthy to Tampa Bay. Chop Robinson to Arizona at 27. A.D. Mitchell to the Bills. We're all in agreement there at number 28. Cooper DeJean goes to the Lions. They love their Iowa Hawkeyes.
They do. They do love their Iowa Hawkeyes.
And they
worked out pretty well for them, too.
Yes, and they go get another versatile defensive back, number 29. Tyler Guyton to Baltimore at 30. Jordan Morgan to San Francisco at 31. He might be more of a guard. They really need guards. Their interior line was a bit of a mess last year. And then the Cowboys with the Chiefs pick at 32 take Jackson Powers-Johnson, a center out of Oregon.
The one that stands out here, and I hate doing this guy won't fall past this position. I do think if DeJean is on the board at 25, that's who Green Bay would take, because the Packers need a safety and a nickel corner. And why not just double dip and get both needs in one player in DeJean? I do think he probably would be the pick if he's on the board at 25 instead of Barton, but I love Graham Barton. I think he's a Packer through and through as well. No, this is very solid. I like putting Jared Verse as edge 2. I love his game. I think he is nasty. I don't know if he's as good of an athlete in terms of testing numbers as Dallas Turner or Laitu Latu. I'm a big, big fan of Jared Verse's game, though. So I like putting him as edge 2. That's probably my favorite one on here. Other ones, I don't think you have anything that I hate. Good job.
Thank you. I would have, had we done this Monday morning, I would have had the Broncos taking Bo Nix at 12. I think going and getting Zach Wilson suggests to me that they're willing to let the draft board fall. If Nix were there for them in the early 2nd round, they might jump. They might wait and take a project quarterback like a Jordan Travis or a Spencer Rattler, or they might just decide to go into next year with the worst quarterback room known to man and punt on the quarterback position again, which would be very
kick the can down the road,
which would be very Broncos of the last 8 years.
No kidding.
Of them.
All right, Spencer, what do you have? We actually have a handful of picks in the middle to late part of this draft, very similar.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start here with the same picks that Dan just mentioned.
Yeah, you guys have the same top 4.
Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison Jr. I tinkered with, as I said, the Cardinals. Taking some calls, they're taking some calls at number 4, but
we were picking up the phone.
Yeah, and they're like, you know what? We need to get Kyler a threat to see if Kyler can actually be our franchise quarterback. And if you get Marvin Harrison Jr. and he can't do that, then you're going to need to get a quarterback next year, probably in the upper part of the 1st round.
Yeah, that's true.
At 5, the Chargers again thought about trading back. They end up taking an offensive tackle from Oregon State, Talise Fuaga.
Yep.
And then I have Neighbors going to the Giants at 6.
And both you guys said that one.
The Giants decided they are going to keep with Daniel Jones.
Good luck.
Yeah. This is an NFC East draft, clearly.
Yeah, biases on display.
Then again, at 7, Titans thought about trading. They keep their pick, get offensive tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. This is where the Falcons are taking calls, and the Vikings say, you know what? We can't let the Bears trade with somebody at 10 or at 9 because the Bears are not going to trade with us. So they trade up. With the Falcons, they trade. The only way that worked for me is the Vikings traded their 2 first-round picks, 11 and 23, and got back the 8th pick, and then I think like a 6th rounder.
And take JJ McCarthy.
Okay. At number 8. Then again, Chicago decides not to trade because the Broncos or Raiders don't trade. So I got Dallas Turner, the edge rusher, going there.
I like that one. They need edge help badly.
Yeah. You got Sweat, and that's about it.
Yes. That's truly it for them. Yeah.
And then
Jets go offensive line.
Yeah, Jets go offensive line with Fashanu. Not going to try and do his first name.
Olu is fine.
Yeah.
I believe he goes by Olu.
Rome Odunze to the Falcons at 11.
We get fascinating
corner.
I like the idea of them taking a wide receiver.
I do too.
Corner to the Broncos,
Terrion Arnold. Yep.
I'll tell you what, there would be some very angry Bronco fans.
Well, you know why? Because I think they're going to trade Surtain.
For what?
I don't know. Later, sometime.
No, I mean, I think Surtain's a long-term piece. I have seen the Broncos go defensive back in some other mocks. I'm just telling you, if they decide to go defensive back again in another draft where they like really need a quarterback, people are going to lose their minds. People I know are going to lose their minds. Anyhow,
at 13, Raiders go with an offensive tackle out of Washington, Troy
Fatanu.
Mm-hmm. So many like oohs and ahs. Fatanu.
Yeah.
Then the Saints go with an offensive tackle, Amarius Mims. 15, Brian Thomas Jr. to the Colts.
Yeah, we both had that one.
Graham Barton, the center, goes to the Seahawks.
That is a Seahawks pick, and they do need interior line help. I don't mind that.
He can play 5 positions. I love Graham Barton. I really do. He can play all 5 spots. Whoever takes him is getting a player.
The Jaguars get an edge rusher, Latu at 17.
You have Bowers all the way to 18.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, I love that for Cincinnati,
Brock Bowers falls into the lap of the Bengals, and Joe Burrow is jumping for joy watching the draft, knowing that he's going to get a target like Brock Bowers. At 19, edge rusher Jared Verse to the Rams. 20, you get an offensive tackle out of Alabama, J.C. Latham to the Steelers. I don't know how this guy falls to 21 to Miami, but Byron Murphy, the second, falls to the Dolphins. They take him. The Eagles take cornerback Quinyon Mitchell.
So we all have the Eagles taking a defensive back, but 3 different defensive backs.
That's kind of wild.
The Falcons, in their second pick that they got from the Vikings, select Chop Robinson, the edge rusher.
I will tell you right now, my favorite picks for you are trading back with Atlanta and taking Odunze and Chop Robinson. I like that a lot.
Here's the only thing. The floor for Chop Robinson is another former Falcon, Vic Beasley, and that might scare the Falcons off a little bit.
Yeah, he is the highest variance edge, I think.
That's the floor, though, right? It's just a guy with speed and nothing else who doesn't produce like you think he ought to produce.
Yeah. Then we got Guyton to the Cowboys. Obviously, they need offensive line help, but they need a ton of other help, so it doesn't matter where they go there. Nate Wiggins to the Packers and Kool-Aid McKinstry back-to-back at 25, 26. One of you guys had him back-to-back at 26, 27.
I did, yeah.
Then a center, Jackson Powers Johnson to the Cardinals at 27. 28, A.D. Mitchell to the Bills, which we all had. 29, a defensive tackle to the Lions, Johnny Newton out of Illinois.
Johnny Newton and Aiden Hutchinson on the same defensive line would not be fair.
That's nasty, man. That's nasty.
That was my thought.
That is certifiably gnarly.
All right, who are your last 3 then, Spencer?
To the Ravens, Cooper DeJean, the safety from Iowa. And then 31 to the 49ers. They need a guard, so they get Christian Haynes out of UConn. And then 32, the fastest receiver, I believe, in the draft. Xavier Worthy's there for the taking for the Chiefs.
Add some speed.
And they select him. Basically, Penix don't go in the first round for me. Somebody trades up in my hypothetical second round and gets him with the Panthers. Panthers stockpile more picks as they continue to.
Okay.
And then I think the Chiefs do something and get a tackle in their next pick.
Your favorite pick from Spencer's draft?
Favorite pick from Spencer's draft might be if Johnny Newton's there, 29. Like the draft board falls really kindly for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
In his like Bowers at 18 to the Bengals.
That's crazy.
See, I thought about that, and once I finished, I was like, you know what? these teams got really lucky.
Tell us who you think had the best draft. Again, you can go find them at our website, 580wibw.com. We'll find out Friday who the winner is for this year's prognostications. One Gotta Go is up next, and then we'll talk some K-State hoops coming up later this hour on 580 Sports Talk. One Gotta Go time here on 580 Sports Talk. I'm going to give you an inverse One Gotta Go. You've got to pick one. And I guess we'll just use three prospects here because the top three in the draft are pretty much nailed on. Nix, Penix, McCarthy. You got to pick one.
McCarthy.
Okay.
McCarthy.
Younger and
Yeah.
I think going to be a better runner, going to be a little bit more versatile with what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that Bo Nix and Michael Penix are not good leaders, but everything I have read about J.J. McCarthy suggests that he might be one of those guys that just commands a locker room.
Like he's from LaGrange Park, Illinois. What can you expect?
He might have that it.
That's fair. That's fair.
There are days where I talk myself into him being my second favorite quarterback in the whole draft. Like I could talk myself into him over May and Daniels.
Interesting.
Even though, like, I know the whole thing was, well, Michigan didn't trust him to throw the ball in big games. Did you see their running game?
He was dang good.
Do you know who their coach is?
You had McCarthy as well, Spencer?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would too. I would order it McCarthy, Penix, Nix in that order of those three. I think my overall, I mean, shoot, I might say McCarthy's the third best. I feel bad. I'm picking on Jaden Daniels, but I just really don't think he's going to be very good in the NFL. Dan, what you got?
All right, this is a one gotta go. We all agree that there are 3 wide receiver prospects that are head and shoulders above the rest. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. All 3 of us have them being drafted in that order in our mock drafts. But we also know that there are no sure things in life or in the NFL draft. And I need you to give me the one of those 3 that you are most concerned about. If there is one of those 3 that you are iffy on, one of those 3 you think is most likely not to succeed. Not that we're wishing that on any of these young men.
You said Neighbors,
Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Which of the 3 are you least sold on?
I think I'm going with Neighbors. I think Harrison is the total package. He doesn't have the same kind of physical explosion, but his explosive play rate was higher, in fact, than Neighbors this past season. And that was Neighbors' whole thing, right? Is that he's the most explosive of the group. I can understand anyone who would say Odunze because he did have a tendency to body catch occasionally while he was at Washington. I think he's also the best athlete of any of them, and I think can be molded into something truly special. So I just love watching him play, frankly. I don't dislike Malik Neighbors by any means, but I think his total package offers a little bit less than the total package from the other 2. So that it essentially comes down to it's by no fault of his own. I just think the other 2 guys are better than he is. I think they bring a little bit more to the table.
What do you think, Spencer?
I think Odunze here. I mean, yeah, they went to the national title game. Yeah, he had Penix, but I just
don't see it the same way.
I just don't see it.
Then I'll go ahead and provide we'll give all perspectives here. I'll say that the injury history of Marvin Harrison Jr. concerns me just a little bit.
Okay.
And I've heard a lot. If you read Bruce Feldman on The Athletic, he did a whole draft confidential and talking to guys who are, college coaches, NFL coaches, position coaches, executives, former executives. There are a lot of people saying, actually, we like Neighbors better than we like Marvin Harrison Jr. And with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s production and pedigree, there shouldn't be anybody in the draft who stands out as better than him. That tells me maybe something's missing. Maybe we're missing something with Marvin Harrison Jr. and we're just putting the pedigree on a pedestal in a way that maybe we shouldn't in relation to these other 2 guys who are every bit as productive.
That's fair. I've heard a lot of that too, and I've read a lot of that too, that there are teams that really like Neighbors. And
to be fair, this is playing devil's advocate a little bit. I think all 3 of these dudes are going to be awesome, and I hope that they are. More good football players is better for the NFL.
Yes, that is certainly true. 100%. Spencer, do you have a one got to go for us?
Yes. If you could only eat 3 of these, this goes back to yesterday's random question Tuesday of mine. If you could only eat 3 of these for the rest of your life and you could never think about or eat the one that's got to go, nachos, quesadillas, burritos, or enchiladas.
Oh, very easy. Nachos. Throw them out.
Yeah, that's an easy choice for me too. They're just a little bit too messy. Everything else I can
Just get wet. Like eventually you just, look, the middle. They're all full of beef. It also just bends over and is all flimsy and flaccid.
Yeah, I'll just eat one chip at a time and dip them into whatever I want to dip them in, whether that's guacamole or.
Yeah, I would pass on the nachos. I think Dan said the same thing.
Yes. All right. I would pass on enchiladas only because
really
they're so you can get them at a Mexican restaurant, right? But making them is just such a process.
Too tedious to make them at home.
Like the other ones are very easy to make.
Making nachos is insanely easy to make at home. Shout out to Will Ferrell at the beginning of Step Brothers. Just throw some cheese on some chips. Put in the microwave for a minute and a half.
I remember when I used to think as a kid, that was it. That was all nachos were. When I was young,
nothing else more on them.
It's just I used to put slices of cheese on them.
All right.
That was bad. That was a bad young Spencer take.
Yeah, we call that a struggle meal.
Wasn't even in college.
Coming up next on the other side of this commercial break, some major roster adjustments for Kansas State basketball today. On the way out, both RJ Jones and Arthur Kaluma. What does that mean? Does it mean some good news down the pipe in the portal? We'll discuss here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, Dan, and Spencer here with you on 580 Sports Talk. Coming up next hour, Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us for the Wildcat Wrap-up. Big news for K-State today, this morning, really, a pair of departures from the program. RJ Jones is headed to the portal. Arthur Kaluma is entering the NBA draft for the second year in a row. Remember, he also did last year and entered the portal to leave Creighton and ended up, obviously, at Kansas State. Let's start with Kaluma, because he was the bigger contributor this past year, and I think leaves the biggest hole. Arthur Kaluma's talent has never been a question. I think his motor and maybe attention to detail, you could argue, have been the bigger issues for him, because there are games when you would swear he should have been first team all Big 12, and there are games where, like, Art, dude, can you please get a bucket before there are 2 minutes left in the game?
Yeah,
like, please.
There were more than a handful of games this year I can remember watching, and early in games being like, oh man, this is gonna be a big Arthur Kaluma game. Nobody on this other team can guard him. And Kaluma would finish with 12 points. And it would be like, what happened? He kind of drifted in and out of games.
Yes.
A little bit, I would say. And I don't know if that's attention, effort. Like, I don't know if it's even any of those things. It may have just been that's his ceiling, is just a guy who is there in fits and starts. It feels like there should be more there athletically. We know that he improved in one department he really needed to improve in, which was his shooting. He was a 35% three-point shooter after being sub 30% at Creighton. That was the biggest knock on him. The reason he didn't stay in the NBA draft process was, okay, like, you look like physically a 3-and-D wing in the NBA, but the 3 portion of the equation is not there for him yet. And while it's a little better, I still don't think it's all the way there for him to be a guy who carves out much of a NBA career. But I don't know that there's much left for him to do in college either. I think he has bumped his head on the ceiling of what he is going to be as a college player, so you may as well go pro now, is how I see it for him.
He did not specify in his announcement whether or not he was keeping his eligibility open. Most of the time, these announcements are pretty cookie cutter. Most of the time, guys will either say, I am going to forego my final years of eligibility or my remaining eligibility, or will, like Johnny Furphy, specifically say, I am leaving my college eligibility open. I want to maintain that. You'll sign with an NCAA certified agent, etc. I am guessing, this is just a guess, this is not a report, I am guessing he is done at K-State and done with college basketball. And look, some guys are. You want to move on. Maybe school's not your thing. Maybe you just want to go make money, whether it is in the NBA or in the G League or in Europe or Asia or wherever, and you just go and you play somewhere else. And I wish Kaluma the best. That is unfortunate, though, because the longer it took for him to enter, the more I thought it was a possibility he would actually come back. That leaves a big hole on the wing. We will get to that momentarily. The other player who is leaving K-State as of today, reportedly, RJ Jones, who I didn't know this until I saw it from Ryan Gilbert of Go PowerCat. RJ Jones was the first player that Jerome Tang offered after taking the job at K-State. He was a top 80 player in last year's class, according to the 24/7 composite, had a ton of offers, 19 of them in total, beat OU, TCU, Illinois, USC, some good programs to land RJ Jones. And there's always development that you can have going from year one to year two. I mean, freshman to sophomore year is sometimes when you make the biggest leap. Didn't do a whole lot this past season, aside from a couple glimmers here or there. Thought maybe he could have been a three-point specialist. He shot under 30% from three-point range. Never quite clicked in 28 games, but I was hopeful he was going to stick around because I thought Ames and Jones and Buddy Rich, and then this year's freshman, David Castillo, I thought that was going to be a really solid core to build on for the next era of competitive tournament contending K-State basketball. I still like Buddy Rich. I still like Day-Day Ames. I'm still hopeful for David Castillo. It's a bummer Jones is heading out, but I get it. I understand.
This is another example of somebody who's getting recruited over, and he probably would not be getting recruited over if he'd shot 39.8% instead of 29.8% from three-point range. If your thing is going to be catch and shoot guy, and K-State needs that guy, what evidence did you see from RJ Jones's 28 games as a freshman that he was going to be reliable enough to be that? Now, again, expectations are such
that Kansas State expects to be a tournament team next year. You're not going to put up with another year missing the tournament. Like, you hired Jerome Tang to elevate, right? And year one, elevation happened. You go to the Elite Eight. You contend in the Big 12. You're a top 10 team in the country for a spell, and you go to an Elite Eight. Year two is a bona fide step back. You can't tread water in year three. You want to get back to that level where you're competing at a high level night in, night out in the Big 12. And you need snipers for that. But again,
Yes.
RJ Jones played that role last year. He shot 2 threes a game. Like, he shot 57 threes in 28 games, which that was the biggest surprise to me when I looked at his stats. Like, he played in 28 games.
Are you sure?
He played.
Really? Was I watching all of those games?
Really? I do not remember him getting into as many as 28 games. But he shot 57 threes and only made 17 of them. And that probably led to a conversation when Brendan Housen was getting ready to make his visit that, hey, look, we're recruiting over you. This is going to be our guy. We're going to put our chips in with Brendan Housen. We think we're going to get him. There are some tea leaves that suggest that could happen for K-State, that they could get the former Villanova Wildcat, who just go to Twitter and find video of him shooting the basketball. It's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit more of a proven commodity as your catch and shoot guy than RJ Jones. And again, you have the option as a player. Okay, I can sit and I can learn. I can be a part of this program. I can grow my game. I can compete really hard in practice. I can compete for my spot. Or I can read the writing on the wall that I'm not going to get to play a lot, and I can go somewhere where I can play. And RJ Jones chose the latter. And I do not blame him for doing that one bit. I can't blame anybody who makes the decision, I would like to go somewhere and play. And if this school is telling me I'm not going to play, that I'm getting bumped down on the depth chart, I have an opportunity to go play somewhere else, I'm going to take it.
I get it. And probably we'll take a step down. Probably we'll go to a mid-major program, maybe a high mid-major, but go play. You only have 4 years. Go play. I get it. I totally understand. You bring up Brendan Housen. There are two parts of this, the equation of Kaluma and Jones leaving and then who K-State is targeting in the transfer portal. One, it becomes much more imperative that you land, at this point, a majority of the guys you are targeting in the portal. We know about Cliff Omori from Rutgers. Brendan Housen, who you mentioned, the sharpshooter from Villanova, and then Khalif Battle from Arkansas, who we mentioned yesterday, I think it was, and that seemed a little redundant. Well, suddenly you have a need for a scoring wing because Arthur Kaluma is leaving for the NBA draft. And suddenly Khalif Battle would make a whole lot of sense if he ended up transferring to Kansas State and if Kansas State goes full bore in recruiting him. It becomes even more important that you land a couple of those guys. That being said, there's an open spot for Omori. There's an open spot for Battle. There's an open spot for Brendan Housen. And frankly, as much as I would have been cool with Kaluma coming back, as much as I wanted RJ Jones to come back, if you could land those three players in the portal, and there are a couple other names that have popped up too. I know Eric Bossy at 24/7 has reported on a couple of names that could have interest in a visit to. Not as talented as Omori, but big men. If you could land all those three guys, K-State is not just better in going into 24 than they were this past season. They are way better than they were because Housen's got eligibility left. Yeah. Omori is one of the best big man who's in the portal this year. Khalif Battle is a legitimate scorer who, as far as I'm aware, does not have the same kind of concerns about consistency that Kaluma does. Maybe some, you're in the portal for a reason, but not to the same degree. If you could land those three players, that is a tournament team. That is not, or shouldn't be. Let me talk about expectations here. That shouldn't be they can compete for a tournament spot. That should be, no, we should try to be getting better than a top 6 seed. That's the kind of talent you're adding to this team.
And there are a lot of holes to fill. Right now, on the roster, I count 8 guys. 8 guys on the roster. You got Day Ames returning, Taj Manning returning, Buddy Rich returning, David Castillo into the program, that's 4. Doug McDaniel and CJ Jones transferring in from the portal, that's 6. Maybe David Gasson and Quest Glover.
I wonder if Glover at this point is essentially contingent on if they add other dudes. I don't know that. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I don't know that either. And you still got a week until the portal closes.
more than a week.
Yeah, more. I think, what is it, the 13th?
Yeah, it's not May 1st.
That's the
11th or
new
13th?
portal date.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of roster space to fill, and they need as many as 3 big men, depending on whether Gason's coming back.
Yeah.
And they haven't moved with the urgency on big man that maybe you'd like if you're a K-State fan, but there's a lot of holes to fill, and they're going to be really, really active in the portal. And look, that approach worked for year 1 for Jerome Tang. He brought a team together in the portal and got them to play together and got them to the Elite Eight. So I think you have to put a little faith in what Jerome Tang's doing here in the transfer portal at this point. But on the same token, like RJ Jones was a big deal recruit, and it's a shame when it doesn't work out with those guys. You know, because you feel like they picked your school, like as an 18-year-old, you want them to see that through.
And we committed a lot of energy to these guys. That's the other part of it, is it sucks when it doesn't work out. And it's not a hard feelings thing. That's not what I'm saying, but it is like, dang, this was someone we put a lot of energy and time into. We wanted it to work out, but as basketball, man. And again, same thing with Labaron Philon for KU. He got recruited over and said, hey, I don't want to deal with this. Go play somewhere. If you're RJ Jones, you see Brendan Housen, who has a proven track record of shooting coming in. I'm going to go play. Go somewhere where you can play. I don't blame him at all. Going to be a very new look roster for Kansas State, though, because if Gason comes back, which I do still think he will, at this point I do, going to be a new look roster even with a handful of guys back. And that tells you, again, how important development is going to be. Another step up for Gason, and then major development for both Buddy Rich and for Day-Day Ames as well. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk more about K-State, and we'll call our draft shots coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. now, it's the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He's Dan Lucero. He's Spencer Dupuis. Here with you until 6 o'clock today. Royals baseball to follow that. 6 o'clock pregame start time. 6:40 first pitch at the K. Boys in Blue versus the Toronto Blue Jays. You're welcome to be a part of the show. Top City Metal Supply text line is 785-272-9429. No more wasted money and no more wasted materials, because Top City Metal Supply will cut the exact lengths of steel, stainless steel, and aluminum that you need fit to your project's specifications. So find them on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field here in the capital city. That is Top City Metal Supply. You can also find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. It's where you can go find the show every single day. Go back and watch old episodes of the show as well, and can hang out with us, and you can leave a comment. Let us know whatever your thoughts are on whatever we're talking about on the show today. Go subscribe, by the way. We're looking to get to 500 subs. We're currently at 481. Love to get to 500 here in the near future. Why don't you head over to our website if you've got a moment, 580wibw.com. You have until 5 o'clock to enter the new keyword for the Alpha Media Choose Your Trip 2024 contest. A trip to anywhere you want to go, including luxury hotel, airfare, VIP experiences, the whole shebang-a-bang. It's all free to enter the Choose Your Trip Alpha Media 2024 contest. Your keyword for the 4 o'clock hour is winning. W-I-N-N-I-N-G. Charlie Sheen's favorite word, winning. Enter that at 580wibw.com. It's free to enter. That keyword only works until 5 o'clock. So enter it over at 580wibw.com. Win the next 52 minutes for your chance to win. We'll have one more keyword coming up for you in the 5 o'clock hour today. Remember when Charlie Sheen freaked out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a moment.
It was a moment.
That is one-time almost Kansas Jayhawks baseball player Charlie Sheen.
Is that right?
Until they told him that he was going to have to go to JUCO to get his grades up. And he said, "Do you know who my dad is?" And went to Hollywood. That's at least the way I've been told that story.
It's always been out there that he was legit throwing in the 80s when he played Ricky Vaughn in the Major League movies.
I saw Major League 2 on TV the other night.
Is that right?
Most sequels not only are not as good as the original, they're just not good. Major League 2 is pretty good as sequels go.
Like, if you can get past the fact that they just replaced Wesley Snipes with Omar Epps.
Well, yeah.
And expected us to believe that Willie Mays Hayes was the same guy. Like, look, just say you traded him. Maybe you traded him for Jack Parkman. And then you had to trade Parkman for something else.
Yeah.
If you can get past that, yeah, it's pretty good. I do like Parkman. He's a very effective sports movie villain.
Yes, he is.
Stopping around second base to pose.
And he plays for the White Sox.
Yes.
It's very fitting.
Not as good as, I can debate this. I thought, oh gosh, what Clue Haywood. Clue Haywood's pretty good in the first one.
Yeah.
He looked down at Jake Taylor, says, "How's your wife and my kid?"
Oh my God. I start swinging immediately. Throw me out, suspend me. I don't care. I lose my freaking mind after that.
You know, the guy who played Clue Haywood was actually a former big league pitcher, Pete Vukovic.
I do not know that.
Now you know.
I do know that now. Fascinating. One other note here. We're going to talk to Tim Fitzgerald later on this hour for the Wildcat Wrap-up. He's going to join us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. We're going to talk plenty of K-State basketball, the transfer targets we just talked about a little bit ago. R.J. Jones leaving, Arthur Kaluma leaving, as well as some football, specifically Dylan Edwards. We talked about Dylan Edwards yesterday on the show. According to Pete Nakos and Steve Wiltfong of On3, Steve Wiltfong was at 24/7 forever. But those guys at On3 reported that there are 4 schools expected to be involved with Dylan Edwards: Texas A&M, Nebraska, Kansas State, and Kansas. Being in the mix is enough. I'm going to tell you right now, I do not expect him to be a Kansas Jayhawk. It would be sick, but I don't think that's what ends up happening. I think he's going to go to State, to be frank with you. I know A&M can drop a whole big bag. I know Nebraska's got some donor money, some NIL funds. I think he is going to be a Kansas State Wildcat. We'll talk about that with him.
Speaking of K-State, we have breaking K-State news.
Let's dive right into it.
K-State football has just posted on Twitter that the Wildcats will participate in the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic at Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland on August 23rd, 2025. K-State will take on Iowa State. Farmageddon going overseas.
Okay. How do I want to put this delicately? This sucks. This blows.
Yeah, I hate it too.
This is the worst.
I really hate it.
You're taking away a game that is no longer a permanent rivalry. Let's remember that. Farmageddon is not a permanent rivalry in Big 12 football anymore. It'll be played most years, not every year. And you're going to move it out of, where was this supposed to be played? Do you know?
I do not.
I do not either. We can find out pretty easily, though. I assume it was, let's see here. I think it was going to be played in Manhattan. Because this year's game is in Iowa City, or is in Ames, excuse me. Sorry, Iowa State, didn't mean to insult you like that. Since this year's game is in Ames, I think next year is supposed to be in Manhattan.
According to our guy Fitz, yes, it is a moved home game at a significant profit for the athletics department, according to Tim Fitzgerald.
Bingo, there's the reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. I know Nebraska made a ton of money playing their game over there against Northwestern last year. Look, I get it. Or maybe that was 2 years ago Nebraska played. Either way, I understand why financially this makes sense. Same as when K-State played in Dallas against Stanford a couple years ago. Remember that? And everybody was up in arms because K-State lost the non-conference home game against Stanford and they played at Jerry World instead.
Yeah.
But they made, I think, $2 million for doing that. I get the business side of it. I do. If you're Joe Wildcat from Great Bend and you have Wildcat season tickets and you love making the drive down the interstate 6 to 7 times a year to go see your beloved Purple Cats, and you're finding out, hey, we're moving Farmageddon to Ireland, but don't worry, the athletic department's gonna pull in a few euros for doing this. You know what I would do? Lose my mind. I would be so mad. I am, frankly, and I'm sure when we talk to Fitz about this, I know he'll say, hey, this is good business. I recognize and respect and understand that. As a fan, specifically in this conference, I am so over being told, well, this is the best business decision. The money for the athletic department, the TV units, I don't care. I care about football and watching my favorite team play football.
And this is the best rivalry that K-State football has, with all due respect to the Governor's Cup and the Sunflower Showdown.
They've won 15 straight. That's not a hot take.
This is the best rivalry that K-State football has. And you're moving it across an entire ocean instead of playing at a Bill Snyder Family Football Stadium. And I just think that sucks. You can't make the money thing matter to me as a fan, as a party without a financial interest in the Kansas State Athletic Department. You can't make me care about that stuff. This is a great rivalry. Great rivalry. One of the best ones that the new Big 12 has going. And you're going to punt it overseas. Week 0 overseas. It stinks. It's going to be, I'm sure, a unique experience for the players to go maybe somewhere they've never been. Don't want to discount that element of it. But for the fan, for the paying customer who maybe looks forward to that home game against Iowa State, and now you got to figure out how to get to Dublin if you want to see it in person, it blows. No thanks. I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. I'm not in favor of this one bit. Pass, man. This sucks. I feel like I was going to watch the game on television regardless, so it doesn't really affect me. But if you're a fan, dude, I'd be livid. I really would. I would not be happy about this.
Want to hear from you, K-State fans. Let us know your instant reaction. Farmageddon heading to Dublin in 2025. 785-272-9429 on the Top City Mail Supply text line. You can also weigh in the comments on Twitter, on Facebook, or in the YouTube live chat. How you feel about it?
Well, I'll talk to Fitz about it coming up at the bottom of the hour as well. Wanted to get to a little more NFL draft. It comes up tomorrow. You guys will get your final preview in. I'm out of here the rest of the week. I'm abandoning you. Really, I'm not abandoning. This is a business decision for us so we can increase our YouTube subscribers. But we'll do final thoughts on the draft coming up on a shortened show tomorrow. But I wanted to call our shot. Some bold takes, some bold predictions, things we are just so confident in for the NFL draft for this year. And a perfect avenue to do this, Dan, you found something from Ben Solak that I thought would be a fun exercise to get some strong takes in.
Yeah, so the idea is this. How many players are you confident are going in the first round? So if we were putting together a list of first-round players with the idea that your score, so to speak, if you have one player on your list who is not taken in the first round, is 0. So you're trying to get the highest score. It's like bidding on The Price is Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can name that tune in X amount of notes. Like you don't want to get you don't want to overbid yourself here.
Mm-hmm.
How many players are you dead convinced are going in the first round no matter what? Like Caleb Williams to be on the list because he's going number 1.
Right.
The other 2 big deal quarterbacks. Brock Bowers is definitely
Marvin
going in the
Harrison
first round.
Jr.
The top 3 wide receivers we talked about, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, those guys are going in the first round. Who else do you put on the list and say, I am dead certain this is a first-round player? There's no way they're going to drop out of the first round.
Okay, without even looking at like who our mock drafts were, to pick some names out here, what would your guess be? Like, what would your estimation be? Guys who are no doubters locked in.
Okay, so the guys we've named already. So
the top
Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison, Adunze, Neighbors. I would say JJ McCarthy. So we're at 7.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Bowers, 8. Joe Alt's the best offensive lineman, 9.
Mm-hmm.
The best edge guys are Dallas Turner and Jared Verse. It's 11.
I would add Latu too. I think he's going to be a first round pick.
Latu, the top 2 corners, Mitchell and Arnold.
Yeah.
That's 14.
I don't
think McKinstry's making it out.
I don't think. See, I wouldn't put all the other corners in because I think there is at least an argument. Like the guys you've listed so far, like there is no argument that Marvin Harrison falls. He is going first round. I think you could make an argument for either Wiggins or McKinstry that they don't end up a first round pick. I would take them in the first round. We all did. We all put him in our mock drafts. But McKinstry had some ups and downs his final year at Alabama and had some athletic questions. Nate Wiggins is tiny. He is not very big. Maybe that's a reason why one of those guys ends up falling. I mean, shoot, and this is where it becomes interesting, right? Because I was telling you guys how much I like Graham Barton. I think Graham Barton would make a lot of sense for Green Bay. You and I, Dan, both mocked him there. Spencer, you had him top half of the first round. You had him 16th.
So Seattle, yeah.
Seattle.
Could you not make an argument, though, that in the first round, you want a player who you know where they're going to play and that you don't want a man without a position?
Yeah, you could argue that.
I think, like, I would not put him on this list as a must-have for sure guy, I think.
As I look at my own mock draft, like, I get through about the first half of it, and then in the second half, it's all guys who, like, I can see an argument that Latu's neck injury is maybe a bigger concern for some teams than others. Amarius Mims's relative lack of college experience could be a problem. Johnny Newton's size, even though I don't think that matters, it matters to some teams. And if it matters to the teams who need interior linemen.
Aaron Donald went 13th overall.
Right. And they pass on Johnny Newton. Okay, I guess that's the argument. Chop Robinson's size, even though that's another player I really like. You start being able to play devil's advocate with the second half of the first round.
This is a really interesting one. I don't know like what the threshold is because I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at what my mock picks where I get to like 19 is where I have Jared Verse. After that, JC Latham. I think Latham is probably going to be a first round pick, but there are so many offensive tackles. Again, do you feel like you can wait and maybe you reach on someone else? So a Mims falls or a Guyton falls?
And then who's to say, a team picking in the 20s or late 20s and there's some offensive linemen on the board. Maybe they really like Jordan Morgan. Maybe they really like Patrick Paul. Maybe they really like Kingsley Suamataya, a guy we've talked a bunch about.
I've got like 17 or 18 of my guys' locks.
That's probably an appropriate number of guys.
Yeah.
Because that corresponds a lot with the number I think I've seen for this year. A lot of teams say like 16 first-round picks. That's the Chiefs' number. Brett Veach gave that during his presser last week, said we have 16 first-round grades. So, yeah, if you're saying 17 or 18 locked in, I think that lines up perfectly. I just love my mock so much. I'm looking at like 29.
Yeah, that's just
I
it.
mean,
Like,
yeah,
I think
ideally
all
I'd
my
like at
picks are
24,
Right.
but like in reality, I think it's 16 or 17.
There's always reaches. Because you know the thing that changed it, I know I'm the only one who put Bo Nix in a mock draft, but let's say someone gets desperate. Let's say someone says, hey, you know what? Instead of taking him with trading with Carolina, first pick of the second round, like you hypothesized, Spencer, we want a fifth-year option because we want, if Nix or Penix works out, we want to be able to keep him on that cheap-ish deal for an extra year. Let's move up. Let's trade with the Chiefs at 32 and go take him. And suddenly, Bo Nix is a first-rounder and Jordan Morgan is not. That's where this becomes a unique mix here. So you go to 0 as soon as someone off your board is picked. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
Or no. As soon as somebody who's on your board does not get picked in the first round.
Okay. All right. I had it backwards. Sorry.
So yeah, you're basically bidding for how many like sure thing first rounders can you name. YouTube commenter and former first round pick out of Purdue in 1957, Lenny Dawson, says he sees 20.
That was going to be my number. I was going to go with the even 20 as well. Lenny and I are on the same wavelength here. Because again, I feel like those top edge guys are all going to go. If anyone wasn't, I think it's Chop, because I think there's some questions about his production at the college level, and is he more than just a speed rusher? I think you've got 4 receivers who are no doubters. I think it's their top 3 and Thomas, I think, are no doubters.
Yeah, I think Brian Thomas going first round.
I mean, even A.D. Mitchell, I think he's a surefire first rounder, but I could see an argument why you might wait on him. I think defensive back wise, the 2 top corners that you mentioned, Dan, Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold, I think DeJean's a first rounder. I do believe certainly he is going to end up going in the first round. The tackles are where I have the question marks because there are just so many of them that they get pushed down the board, right?
Yeah.
It's because you think, hey, look, we're Miami. All right, at 21. Miami needs offensive line help. I have them going with an offensive lineman, Amarius Mims. What's the comparison? Dan, you have them going with Johnny Newton. They say, hey, look, we need help in the trenches on both sides.
We lost Christian Wilkins. We need a defensive tackle. Johnny Newton's on the board. Let's get him.
And we think in the second round, we can either get, Tyler Guyton if he slides, or we can get Suamataya, or we can go and get Amagaji from Yale. We can find one of those guys. Let's push them down the board a little bit. That's the thing that makes it so interesting. I think the tackle position is the one that really swings it this year. I'll go 20. I'm going to say 20. That would be my number.
So I think
my rough number, I guess.
Yeah, I think everybody in I feel really good about the first 19 guys in my mock draft going in the first round, plus Brian Thomas.
There's 20.
That's 20. I'll say somebody takes Johnny Newton, somebody takes Cooper DeJean. 22. That's my number, 22.
Does it feel like there's a lot of consensus on the first round this year? I was thinking about that when I was reading through all of our 3. I mean, there are very few players that we don't all have. I mean, you guys have Jackson Powers Johnson and Xavier Worthy, and I don't. I know I threw on Bo Nix. That was a riskier pick for mine. I threw on Mikey Sandristel too.
You and I both have Jordan Morgan.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the difference is we don't have a guy going in like the teens that somebody else says, yeah, that's not a first round player.
Yeah.
And part of that is, let's be real frank about this. We're probably reading the same mock drafts. We're probably consuming a lot of the same draft content. And so that does lead to like a broader, I think, consensus of this is what we feel like these teams are going to do.
As multiple subscribers to The Athletic read Dane Brugler,
Right.
I can understand why we might have those kind of similarities. I would love to know from you, either on the Top City Metal Supply text line or on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube comments. Call your shot. Who is the guy? Maybe we're not talking about him. Maybe you just love him. Who's going first round tomorrow night? And if you think it's Ben Sinnott, because we have had so many texters who say, what about Ben Sinnott? What about Ben Sinnott? If you think it's him, tell us. You think he's going in the first round, but I'd love to hear you call your shot. Again, 785-272-9429, or you can find us on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel. What is Wrong with You is coming up after this commercial break, and then we'll talk to Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com for the Wildcat Wrap-up on 580 Sports Talk. Let's find our daily winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Actually, before we get to What Is Wrong With You, I want to get to a comment on YouTube from our guy Lenny Dawson, who says his called shot for the draft, Patrick Paul and Bo Nix in the first round. I kind of like that Patrick Paul one. That's a name that's got a lot of momentum behind it.
Yeah, Paul and his representation have been saying they've got a lot of teams telling them, hey, we like you in the first round. So I wouldn't be shocked. And I wouldn't be surprised if a team moved up to the late part of the first round to make sure they get Bo Nix. Maybe that's the Giants. Maybe that's the Broncos. Maybe that's the Raiders. I think two of those three teams are going to come away with Nix and Penix, either late day one or early day two.
The one I would say second round, Michael Penix to the Raiders. That name has been connected to the Raiders for months at this point. I would sometimes in the first round, but I would not be surprised if that's the team that ended up going with Michael Penix. They also have something of a carousel like quarterback in Las Vegas right now. Appreciate that from Lenny, and we would love to hear from you guys as well. Again, Top City Metal Supply text line 785-272-9429 or in the 580 Sports Talk YouTube comments. All right, what is wrong with you time? Our winner so far for the week, it is the guy who was huffing nitrous oxide in Oregon, swinging around a sword, He was found in a porta potty. He was doing the most.
Led police on a 3-day chase, a 3-day hunt.
Yeah, what a mess. Dan, you're up first with today's stories.
I can't improve on the lead here from WTHR in Indianapolis. Police found a pregnant woman and her car covered in spaghetti after a road rage incident on the northwest side of Indianapolis Saturday evening. According to police, a woman called 911 around 5 p.m. April 17th, saying a driver had flashed a gun at her during a road rage incident. Woman told police she was turning right onto West 46th Street from Moeller Road when the other driver made a left turn in front of her. Jerk move. The woman shouted at the other driver, who she claims then brake checked her. She made it around the other driver, who she said then showed a silver gun and followed her. The woman told police she was too scared to stop at her house. Smart. So she circled around and called police. The woman, who also had her 3 children in the car with her, said as she got to Moeller Road and West 38th, the other driver took a container of spaghetti and threw it, covering her and her car. She also claims the other driver sideswiped her car at the same time. She claims she tried to get the other driver to give insurance information. The other driver was again holding a gun and pointing it at her. The driver of the other car claimed the woman hit her car and she was simply following it to get a picture of the license plate. Police arrested the driver, Sheila Pride of Indianapolis, and she is charged with intimidation and pointing a firearm. I don't believe throwing spaghetti is either a misdemeanor or a felony in the state of Indiana. Her trial has been tentatively set for June.
I can understand being sideswiped while having spaghetti thrown at you. I mean, it's probably hard to keep the wheels straight.
Like, why? She said, I keep that thing on me. She was talking about a gun and a plate of spaghetti.
And ragu.
Like, do we think this was homemade? Was she like taking it home from the Olive Garden? I don't know if there's an Olive Garden in the vicinity. I do not know Northwest Indianapolis very well.
I bet there is. I'm just gonna
have to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we think? Do we think it was like take home from like a restaurant?
I would think so.
It's around 5 p.m. though.
It might be take home stuff, like didn't finish your lunch, maybe,
or like ordered dinner.
Yeah, it could
went
be.
to pick up dinner,
That
but
could
then
pick
got
up.
really mad and threw out the. That can't be it. It's got to be like
Then you just screwed up your dinner.
Yeah. I wouldn't be like, you've got a gun. Like, I think you're already making your point without throwing spaghetti at somebody. And
that's just insulting.
Yeah, and if you're the other woman, why do you have your window down? They got a gun.
My story today is going to take us down to Florida. One of my favorite fraud stories I think we've ever had. A Florida couple is facing multiple felonies after allegedly trying to claim a forged $1 million lottery ticket. Dakota Jones and Kira Enders, a couple from Defuniak Springs, were charged with presenting a forged state lottery ticket, forging a lottery ticket with intent to defraud, and grand theft of $100,000 or more. According to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, Enders and Jones cobbled together pieces of 2 different 500 times the cash Florida lottery scratch-off tickets to create a single winning ticket. Quote, each of those tickets were ripped horizontally and then carefully placed together to become one fraudulently altered ticket using the top half of one and the bottom half of the other, according to the police report. That fraudulently altered ticket now visually shows it is a $1 million prize winner. Enders then drove to the Florida Lottery's Pensacola office on March 1st and submitted the official claim form for ownership and payment of the $1 million ticket. 6 days later, she called the Florida Lottery and spoke to Special Agent Richard Pisanti, who asked about the status of her claim. Pisanti then said, hey, will you come down to the office on March 11th to go over some paperwork? Jones and Enders drove to Pensacola to meet with him and were immediately detained and separated for investigation. While sitting down with Pisanti, Enders said she believed the ticket was worth $1 million, and she played and scratched off the ticket herself. She also claims she took the fraudulent ticket to 3 stores to get it scanned, but all of them told her, oh, your ticket won't scan, so that's why she went directly to the Florida Lottery. Enders, quote, stated that the ticket was in her car and it must have fallen out because when she found it the next day, it had been rained on. She stated that she tried to scratch the ticket before it was dry and it started falling apart, so she taped it so it wouldn't get more ruined than it already was. A very likely story. Despite the officer showing Enders that the words on the back of the ticket did not match, Enders said, quote, what, they don't go together? And insisted she just hadn't taped it correctly. Her partner, Dakota Jones, however, was willing to sing like a canary because he told the officers, quote, yeah, she knew, man. Jones had told the officer that he and Enders were walking down the road in Defuniak when they saw half the lottery ticket and said, what if that was the winner? And then said they scratched the other one, put it together and told them the truth. So totally sold her out. And now they are both facing 40 years in prison for third-degree felonies.
That's wild. That feels extreme. Florida we're talking about, but
big time.
That's so funny. Yeah, the words on the back don't match. Are they supposed to?
This law government. What do you mean they don't match? This is bad tape.
That's amazing. Somebody hadn't tried this before. Shoot your shot.
Well, if you're going to go to prison for 40 years, I get it.
Yeah, like if it's one of those, if the worst they could say was no, then that's one thing. But if the worst they can say is you're sentenced to 40 years in prison, maybe don't try.
All right, who's your winner today?
Somebody threw spaghetti at somebody.
Yeah.
I think that wins the week.
Well, who wins the week?
Oh,
All right.
I don't know about that.
I think spaghetti throwing wins the week.
Spaghetti throwing or the guy who was, he was high. He's also swinging a sword. I'll go with spaghetti.
Yeah, I guess that now.
Tie goes to sobriety. Yeah. All right. Our spaghetti tosser. That is the new winner this week in What Is Wrong With You. Tim Fitzgerald. He'll join us next on 580 Sports Talk.
It's a big Kansas State victory.
It's been a pretty darn big day for the Kansas State Wildcats, and to make sense of it all, we are now joined by our good friend, the best of the best, Tim Fitzgerald, the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can also find his great work via Twitter, at Life of Fitz is his handle there. Been a hell of a day, hasn't it, Fitz?
Hey, it has, lad. It has.
All right, well, let's just start there. This news broke just at the top of the hour. K-State will play Farmageddon against Iowa State over in Dublin coming up in 2025. I know you had some inside scoops about this over at GoPowerCat.com. This is why, people, I tell you, go be a VIP at 24/7. You aren't going to regret it. Yay or nay, Fitz? I'm playing a rivalry game overseas.
A little of both, to be honest. I love Farmageddon. I love the rivalry. That's why I think it's awful that these teams aren't playing in 2027. Honestly, K-State doesn't have a non-con in 2027. I almost hope they do it with Iowa State. But anyhow, people are upset about losing a home game, and I get that. People are certainly upset about losing Farmageddon, and I understand that. But Kansas State will be paid handsomely to move a home game. And in this college athletics world of a constant battle for resources, mostly money, that's pretty significant. And I'm really happy for the athletic department financially, but also, folks, this is a huge stage for these two programs to go on to. And, I think it's a pretty cool opportunity for both schools.
The thing that stands out to me the most about this, Fitz, and the reason that I'm more on the negative side, because you're right. I mean, it's money to the athletic department. I understand that. It's a big stage, and they'll be the only game in the window that day. I do understand it, but it's the fact that this isn't a permanent rivalry anymore, because it is one that means a lot to both K-State and to the Iowa State fan bases and to the schools too. It's just tough for me to reconcile that you're losing such a big Big 12 game. Like if this was K-State TCU, sure, all great, go for it. But it's tough for me to reconcile the fact that it's the Iowa State game because it is such a big deal.
It brings up this question. I assume Iowa State would have the home game in 2026, but when you're doing some of these series in the Big 12, 3 games, someone gets 2 and you get 1. I'm sure the game will be in Iowa State. So that means K-State won't have a game with Iowa State in Manhattan in 25, 26, and 27 for certain. And I imagine people are disappointed in that. And I also recognize that this isn't necessarily great for local business. But the athletic department can't pass up the revenue in the current environment.
Very similar. I was mentioning this earlier. Very similar to when the Stanford game got moved to Dallas a couple years ago, right?
Yeah. And I don't even think that money was as significant as this. But this is something really cool. And I love this game. I've watched or listened to this game every time, naturally, because my roots are there. So on a personal level, I'm just really excited to get the opportunity to go to Ireland, which I've never done. And I get to do it before I leave this beautiful planet. And I'm fired up about it. And I apologize to the nation of Ireland for anything I do in the week leading up to the game.
Hey,
please don't deport me. I have to cover the game.
What happens in Dublin stays in Dublin. I'm pretty sure that's how that phrase goes. We're talking to Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. He joins us for the Wildcat Wrap-up on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline here on 580 Sports Talk. Go check out GoPowerCat for all the best coverage of all things K-State. So while we're talking about Cats football, Fitz, let's get to Dylan Edwards, the Derby product who was a one-time K-State commit, one-time Notre Dame commit, then played a year at Colorado. He is transferring. Aside from the fact that someone who has such a close tie to Deion Sanders is now leaving that program, which is a storyline in and of itself, obviously K-State is going to be in the mix here for a very talented player. I know there was a lot of drama before he committed and when he was a K-State commit. How deeply involved do you think Kleiman and company will be with Dylan Edwards in the portal?
Very deep. I mean, fans were upset. There were things said, but none of that ever came from the football staff. From the moment the decommit happened, let alone the double decommit where he ends up at Colorado, Kansas State made it very clear the door's open in the future. And Colorado's clamoring that maybe K-State tampered. No, the young man's known since before he arrived in Boulder that he has the soft landing spot if he wants it. And if you had to ask me today, it's going to happen. But you just don't know anymore. And recruiting with the NIL, I saw Texas A&M hopped in. And I'm sure they will make a very generous offer. But at this point, it's clear that Dylan's kind of searching for where his feet belong. And I think going on an NIL adventure right now probably won't solve that. I think in his gut, he knows he wants to be in Manhattan. And people may not realize this, but he and Avery Johnson are extremely tight. The families are tight. They have grown up around each other for a very long time. They're almost like brothers. So the realm of this happening seems to be fairly close to reality.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-up, as he does every Wednesday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Check out Fitz and his staff's outstanding work at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, how involved then would Avery Johnson be in trying to compel Dylan Edwards to matriculate back to Manhattan? Is that a thing that a player would get involved in such a way?
Oh yeah. And from what I'm told, these two text each other all the time, just about life. I mean, just like you would stay in touch with a family member. And so I'm sure that's been a topic. It's perfectly permissible for that to happen. I mean, they're friends with a pre-existing relationship. And, I think one of the best recruiting tools K-State has right now is Avery Johnson, not just because the opportunity to play with him that excites a lot of, offensive players, but also he's a natural leader and he does want to be involved in recruiting. He does want to play a part in building the program. And the positives around Avery are just numerous. A great young man, a natural leader, a great student. He's kind of good looking. I don't know if you noticed that. That blonde hair kind of shocks you a little bit. He's marketable, and he's doing the right things. He's really well-grounded guy. It's impressive.
If Dylan Edwards were to come to Kansas State, what would his fit on the 2024 Wildcats be?
Well, K-State had a feeling that they were going to need to, coming out of spring, that they needed to find a more experienced running back that takes some carries from DJ. I mean, he can't do it the whole game, every game. He did it one game last year and was fantastic, but they know he needs assistance. And, they didn't want Treshaun Ward to leave, but he did. And so, this is like an upgrade from that, to be honest. So this is a guy that can play pure running back. He's also a guy that can be in two-back set with him and Avery and DJ Giddens in the backfield. Good luck with that. He can move to the slot and be a receiver. And he's a kickoff and punt returner, something that, K-State is still up in the air with who's going to handle it. So I think he'll have incredible opportunities if he comes to Kansas State. And, beyond that, he's going to be valued by the fans and the coaching staff in a way that, honestly, I don't think he was at Colorado. I think he felt like they were constantly looking to upgrade over him and, get a more prototypical running back. And they've done that in the transfer portal, and he said enough.
Is this as active as the K-State staff has needed to be in the transfer portal at this stage? I know they've got a lot of offers out. They're looking for a defensive lineman like we talked about last week. I know they're looking for at least one linebacker, maybe more than that, to shore up depth at that spot. Even before the Dylan Edwards announcement that he was hitting the portal, there were rumblings that they did want to bring in a running back, as you just mentioned. Is this an inordinate amount of activity from K-State in the portal at this stage?
They've changed their approach under Clint Brown, the new director of roster management. They're attacking the portal a little bit more. And I've been saying this is what they've been doing wrong. They've been trying to evaluate kids to decide if they want to offer them. Do a thorough investigation. And that's a losing formula. You need to look at the film and go, let's investigate this. Here's your offer. Then go back and do the research. And, you can later come back and say, you know what, we're going to pull back the offer or, not invite him on campus. If you decide he doesn't fit what you want, maybe you find out some stuff about his background that you don't want to mess with, or you see some flaws in his game that really doesn't address what you need. I mean, they brought in a linebacker. They're looking for a middle linebacker and an outside one, but they'd like people that are flexible that could do both. And they brought in a kid. He was a great kid. They loved him, but he wasn't a middle linebacker. He's not capable of doing that. And that's a positive sign to me that they're getting more aggressive in the portal and willing to, really bring kids in and then decide they're not the kid. They used to have to make up their mind before they even brought a kid on campus, and that's too slow for portal recruiting. It just is. You're going to lose that battle. And they've been much more proactive.
We're joined by Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com for the Wildcat Wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. And Fitz, let's change it over to hoops now as some two departures here. We'll start first with Arthur Kaluma. He declares for the draft. Kind of cloudy around. He doesn't say he forgoes his eligibility. He doesn't say he retains it. What do you know on that situation?
I think as far as I know, his intention is to not play college basketball next year. And I guess that's, possible if he doesn't actually put his name in. But I think it's his intention to, be in the NBA or, the D League or in Europe next year and playing professionally. And good for him if that's what makes you happy. I mean, I think if you look at K-State's recruiting, none of this has caught them off guard. And they seem to, it now kind of explains why they've been recruiting more and more guards and wing players than what we expected. Is they knew they'd have some more openings.
And then RJ Davis announces or it's rumored that RJ Davis is going to the portal. I don't think or RJ Jones. I don't think that he's officially come out and said it, but RJ Jones, a freshman, going into the portal.
Yeah, this one kind of hurts. He was a promising freshman, didn't play a ton, good kid. I think this is probably one of those things where K-State got into the portal and they're finding more upgrades than they expected to find. And RJ's looking at this and realizing, I'm not going to play again. They're literally recruiting. It's much like Dylan Edwards. They're recruiting over the top of me where I'm going to end up buried on the depth chart when I thought I was ascending into the depth chart. And I don't know where he's going to end up, but RJ's a great kid. He's going to find a good home because he can play.
To that point you just made there too, Fitz. I mean, look, you wish the best for RJ Davis, or no, I'm doing it. RJ Jones, obviously, and anyone else who's transferring in and out. But we were talking about this last hour on the show. If K-State is possibly going to add the big man from Rutgers, possibly Khalif Battle is interested, the transfer wing from Arkansas. Brendan Housen is one of the best available shooters in the country. He's only ever taken like 23 twos in his whole career. You miss Kaluma, you miss Jones, but that should be a much better roster, and frankly, not even close if they can land some of those guys.
Much better. And, I did my daily delivery today I'm beginning to sense that he's trying to form a roster that reflects a little bit like what they had at Baylor. And if you remember those teams that led in, I don't know how many years, 5 to 10 years leading up to them winning the national title, they were always so athletic. They weren't necessarily big. They'd have one post player that could run with a backup that was like a raw version of the starter. And then they'd have 4 dudes. They might be 6'7", they might be 6'2", or even 5'11". And those dudes would get out there and run and just play their butts off. And I think that's what they're after now. They're just going for as many dudes as they can find, and they want to find 2 true posts to rotate through the middle and go after it. And I'm all in on that. I loved watching Baylor play with those teams.
One way or the other, you got to get a big man in the portal, right?
You got to get 2. You absolutely got to get 2. Even with Gasson, if he comes back, he offers you, which we saw a little bit of this year, the third guy that in case you get into a lot of foul trouble or there's an injury, you can move Gasson back in there. But let's not forget, David Gasson played a lot of center in Tang's first year, and that team went to the Elite Eight. And again, that's a center that can defend. He was a little bit light. We saw it, the troubles they had against FAU with their big man. So they know they need to get bigger, but that was the prototype right there. Let's get up and down and run with all 5 guys, including the post, and let's just beat teams down the floor.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. If you want the best insight into what's going on behind the scenes at K-State, you'll want to be a VIP over at 24/7. You can go follow Fitz as well on Twitter at Life of Fitz. He joins us every Wednesday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. We appreciate it as always, Fitz. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. I'm going to go get some Lucky Charms and eat it all.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. One of the few cereals I ever ate as a kid. We've got 1 hour left of 580 Sports Talk, and it's coming up after our national news. It's the final hour of 580 Sports Talk on a Wednesday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He's Dan Lucero, and he is Spencer Dupuis. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines, little preview from Kansas City for Royals Blue Jays coming up tonight. Game 3 out of 4 at the K. Alec Marsh will take the hill for the Royals. Get to a little more NFL draft talk. I think we're doing a little AMA with the one and only Spencer Dupuis as well.
Why not?
Spencer's got you for the final half hour of the show today. Dan and I both got a bolt. I'm out for the rest of the week.
I am not. I just, my wife and I have a thing tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow. It'll be Spencer and I the rest of the week. And we're going to get at least 19 YouTube subscribers.
Might be 1,900.
Hey.
By the...
It's the youngest in charge movement coming at 5:30.
No. Yeah. We're going to have a whole new look studio, new look format, everything while we're out of here when Spencer takes over.
I'm only leaving for 30 minutes. You can't do anything I can't undo.
The fire extinguisher is over there. No, just messing around. But we'll have a couple of short shows the rest of the week. Royals have day games tomorrow and Friday against the Blue Jays at home and then against the Tigers on the road. The game against the Tigers in Detroit, obviously also the home of the NFL draft. So short shows for you the rest of the week. Matt Derrick will join the guys on Friday. We'll have plenty of draft to preview tomorrow as well right here on 580 Sports Talk. Both days, the show will start as soon as postgame is done for Royals baseball. How about our final keyword for today? We are on the third to last day of the Alpha Media Choose Your Trip 2024 contest. So if you have not entered yet, you want to enter again, I don't exactly know what the rules are. Why not? Throw in another entry. Go to 580WIBW.com. Click on Choose Your Trip 2024. You have until 6 o'clock on the dot to enter the following keyword. It only works for this hour. There will be a new set of keywords tomorrow as well. Your keyword for the 5 o'clock hour is traveler. Traveler. Traveler, like the name of the horse at USC. That is your keyword for the 5 o'clock hour. Go enter it now if you want to win a trip to anywhere you want to go with the Alpha Media Choose Your Trip contest. We've got a bunch of 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to, so let's get right to them. And my first headline, ladies and gentlemen, take joy in knowing that Kansas City and the Royals and the Chiefs are not the only city and group of teams that have a terrible multi-billion-dollar stadium plan that has been revealed in the last few weeks. The Chicago Bears from the city of Big Shoulders, my hometown. I'm from the suburbs, but it's close enough. They have announced today a $4.6 billion plan to build a new enclosed stadium and improve the lakefront area, what they call the museum campus in Chicago, with half of the money coming from taxpayers. For those doing the math at home, that is $2.3 billion from the taxpayers. But the team, this is the reporting of the Chicago Tribune, will have to overcome serious skepticism from several directions. So the stadium itself would cost $3.2 billion, with another $1.4 billion in proposed infrastructure improvements. The sources to this story say the Bears pledged to plan $2.3 billion, including some financing through the NFL. So let's be clear, that is not the Bears footing $2.3 billion. They're footing some of that with help from the league. They also want $2.3 billion in public financing, along with refinancing of outstanding debt for prior publicly financed stadiums for the Bears and the Chicago White Sox. Taxpayers would be on the hook for the proposed infrastructure improvements, along with about $1 billion in new borrowing to finance the stadium south of where Soldier Field currently is. So they put out renderings today of the new stadium, and it looks like any other nice brand new stadium. Here's the thing, and this is a biased opinion. You've been to the city of Chicago before. A lot of people have. It's a great city, great summer city, by the way, if you want to take a short, like a long weekend to Chicago.
Yes.
The lakefront is beautiful, and it's such a cool view, and it's great views all up and down the lakefront. Putting a big old 80,000 person indoor stadium on the lakefront will be a historic eyesore that the spaceship on top of Soldier Field pales in comparison to. It will look hideous.
And that's just the thing. They've already got the reimagined Soldier Field that looks like, I heard somebody once describe it as like if a UFO collided with a cruise liner.
Jeez, that's accurate. That's 100% accurate. So here's the thing about this as well. The other thing about this, in my opinion anyway, you have no chance if you're the Bears of getting this to work. Because more and more municipalities are saying, go build your own stadium. They already have land in the suburbs to build a stadium, but Arlington Heights, Illinois wouldn't give them enough tax breaks. So they went back to the city itself to look for it. And to be blunt, if you know anything about the governor of the state of Illinois right now, J.B. Pritzker, not huge on funding things like stadiums, has raised plenty of taxes. It's been part of his various plans for things like roads and schools and some other maybe arguably superfluous projects, not stadiums though. Good luck getting that guy to approve $2.3 billion in public funding.
If I were Chicago and I just voted down on the grounds of it's indoors, we're going to play, our whole thing is bear weather and we're going to play football inside.
It sucks.
Am I wrong in the fact that I feel like there's been like 3 or 4 iterations of a potential new stadium?
Oh, you are correct. You are 100% correct.
Like they definitely came out in unveiled renderings when they were going to go to the former horse racing site, right?
In Arlington Heights, yes. Former Arlington race course. That beautiful course had to die for this dumbass project, which they didn't even build.
And then was it the mayor?
The former mayor,
The former mayor came out in support of redoing Soldier Field and put out renderings. I don't know if the Bears did it themselves then.
Yes, that was the city. That was former Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And then
now we've got
this even further south on the lakefront. It's a terrible plan. I don't think it has much of a chance, to be honest with you.
$2.3 billion is a big ask from the taxpayer, especially for an indoor stadium, which again goes against everything the Bears have stood for as a franchise.
But Dan, in the renderings, they could bid on a Super Bowl. Not, we have a guarantee from Roger Goodell we will get a Super Bowl. If they have an indoor stadium, they could bid on one.
Is that what I saw? Like there's a tweet earlier that said we could get a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chicago's a great place to visit.
In February, yeah. Yeah, good luck.
Like, just because you have an indoor stadium doesn't mean you're going to get a Super Bowl in the Final Four. It just means you have a more viable bid, but it does not mean you're going to get it over like better event cities like, Los Angeles or, New Orleans.
This is such a bad plan. It is such a bad idea. $2.3 billion from taxpayers.
Yeah, wild.
Insane.
Good luck with that.
For what it's worth, by the way, because I was thinking about this, you know how a billion is 1,000 million, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know what the population of the city of Chicago itself is?
Jeez, it's a lot.
2.66 million people. 2.66 million. We're talking about 2.3 billion. You can do the math on how much that is per citizen of Chicago.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. Outrageous. Good luck. Good luck, Naperville Bears.
Arlington Heights Bears. Has a nice ring to it.
They would sign Jimmy Garoppolo tomorrow.
First headline for me. The Detroit Lions were busy today handing out a pair of contract extensions to 2 of their offensive stars. First, the announcement that wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown will sign a 4-year extension worth $120 million, including a $77 million guarantee. Makes Amon-Ra St. Brown one of the highest paid wide receivers in the game. Lions also extended their star left tackle, Penei Sewell, 4 years, $112 million with an $85 million guarantee for Sewell. Interesting. He got a contract extension before Jamar Chase.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's kind of funny seeing these compared side to side that St. Brown got more total, but less guaranteed.
That is interesting.
I mean, that might not mean anything, but yeah, he got $8 million more total value, $8 million less guaranteed.
And according to Adam Schefter, there is no deal imminent for quarterback Jared Goff.
That is the situation the Lions are going to have to figure out here in the next year or two, because Goff has worked out. Goff has worked out in Detroit. There's no arguing that. Is he the kind of guy who you think is going to age gracefully? Like, is he going to play till he's 40 or his late 30s or whatever? I don't know what the hell you do with that. But whoever the quarterback is, you got to keep your studs around. Penei Sewell is one of the best tackles in the league. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been awesome. It's amazing. The Lions are keeping star players. It is truly a new era. Penei Sewell has not said, I'm going to retire. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not begging his way out. And it is a new era for Lions football. That is a ton of money. Sewell's awesome, though.
Yeah, like he's one of the best left tackles in football and one of the best wide receivers in football. They're worth the money. And whoever their quarterback is going to be, they'll be protected and they'll have a weapon to throw to.
Spencer, what's your first headline today?
Before I get into the headline, I just want to tell people, go in the YouTube comments or text us on the Top City Metal Supply text line, which I don't have the number in my head.
785-272-9429.
There you go. For the Ask Me Anything coming up here after 5:30. My first headline, though, is the Bengals find themselves in an interesting situation ahead of tomorrow's drafts. Three-time Pro Bowler Trey Hendrickson, the defensive end, has requested to be traded from Cincinnati. According to Adam Schefter, he is due to make $15 million this season and is looking for more long-term security than Cincy is willing to offer him. Also, franchise wide receiver T. Higgins has requested to be traded.
Again,
that there have been no trade talks or contract talks with the team in over a year.
That's less of a request than like a reiteration at this point.
Don't forget about me.
Hey, by the way, my name is T. Higgins, in case you have forgotten. It doesn't seem like you want to give me the giant bag of money that I would like you to give me. And if you are not going to do that, I would like you to send me somewhere to a place where they will give me that big bag of money.
The Hendrickson one is huge.
Yeah.
He signed a 1-year extension a year ago. So he's now signed through 2025.
Mm-hmm.
He wants long-term security, right? That's the report from Schefter. He signed a 1-year extension. They can cut him and for nothing. It's $2 million dead cap. They'd save 16. It nothing at all would be lost essentially against the salary cap if they cut him. I don't even know why he signed that in the first place, to be honest with you. This is the Bengals, though, right? This has been the knock on Mike Brown and the Bengals forever, that they are cheap and they do not trade their guys. They don't give these big extensions generally, unless you're Joe Burrow. I get it. It's a franchise quarterback, obviously.
They're incredibly poor. As an organization, they have always been known to be cash poor and cheap, penurious with the money that they do have. Do you know why it's not Paul Brown Stadium anymore? That's how they're paying for the Burrow extension.
Yeah, Paycor is paying for Joe Burrow, essentially. Which is actually really funny. If you think about it. That has been confirmed, by the way. The Athletic, their beat writer, Paul Denner, also said the same thing. What does it take to get Trey Hendrickson? Because you're going to have to pay him. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why he wants out in the first place. Although, well, here's this from Paul Denner. Says, I can also confirm the Bengals have zero interest in dealing him and do not intend to do so.
All right, bet. So you lose him for nothing?
I guess you just let him walk in 2 years or cut him next year.
Is that what they're going to do? Or are the Bengals just going to go to this coming season and say, this is the last year of our big window?
So here's the thing. This full quote. I can confirm Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade. I can also confirm they have zero interest in dealing him and don't intend to do so. Just as with T. Higgins, they are trying to win the Super Bowl this year, not deal stars. Okay, fine. If you want to tell me that is your approach, fine. So be it. Here's the problem you run into. You just gave Joe Burrow the key to the city of Cincinnati. He owns you, okay? Joe Burrow with that contract owns the Bengals effectively in terms of their competitive window, which is fine. Good dude, good quarterback, can be a Super Bowl contender with him. Awesome, great, fine. You want to win the Super Bowl this year. What happens after?
Yeah, what do you want to do in 2025? Like, because if you do an all-in year, you got to reap what you sow the years after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about the strategy of let's take 1 year to load up and give our best shot to dethrone Mahomes instead of saying, let's give ourselves a bunch of chances to do it. Though they are the only team to beat Mahomes in the AFC playoffs outside of the Tom Brady Pats.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they got a right to believe, but I don't know. It's risky, and it gives the impression that they're not willing to use their full salary cap obligations and really go all in for an extended window,
which is crazy. You have the quarterback. You can make this happen.
Yeah.
You are in the most favorable spot in the league. You've got a franchise quarterback. How do you not make this work? By the way, it just popped into my head. Another way to look at the Chiefs' dominance. Since the start of 2018, they've lost 3 playoff games. They've been to the playoffs every year.
Yeah.
They've lost 3. I mean, that's one of the most astounding things I could ever possibly imagine in my head. Next headline for me today. Let's go to college basketball. One player who's going to return for a 5th season, Spencer, who kept jacking up the name.
Joe,
got me jacking up the name.
This is what it was, is I was on our rundown.
Uh-huh.
And I happened to, when I was making sure I was getting the phone line correct.
Mm-hmm. You saw RJ Davis.
I saw Davis, and we were talking to RJ, and in my head, it just crossed.
We were talking about RJ
Crosswise.
Jones, who's transferring out of K-State. RJ Davis, one of the best players in the ACC and one of the best players in modern North Carolina history. He is returning to Chapel Hill. He is going to play his 5th and final season for the North Carolina Tar Heels. He's probably not a pro, at least in the NFL. So that makes a modicum of sense that he is going to come back, make a ton of money in NIL, and continue to win a bunch of games with North Carolina. They've had a good week. Bring back RJ Davis and also Seth Trimble, who had originally entered the portal. He announced earlier this week that he is also going to return to UNC. Other news from around college basketball, a couple notes from the Big 12. Jordan Pope from Oregon State, he has committed to Texas. That will be an entirely new Texas team. I think one player, was it Kendall Weaver, is the only one of their top 8 minutes players last year who is returning.
They got Tremont Mark from Arkansas. They got 2 dudes from that good Indiana State team. Not the 2 best guys, but 2 good guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And now Jordan Pope, a good player from Oregon State, really good player, in fact. Additionally, from the Big 12, Baylor assistant Alvin Brooks III. He is leaving Baylor. He is going to go be the associate head coach for Mark Pope at Kentucky. I will give Scott Drew credit for this, and literally nothing else, but I will give him credit for this. The staff he has built at Baylor over the course of his tenure is the best staff in college basketball.
Yeah, he's got as good a coaching tree as anybody, right?
Anybody, which is kind of funny. Like, you look at Bill Self, who's been at KU equally as long and has had incredible success, obviously. How many successful head coaches have come from under Bill Self's wing? Not Danny.
Not Norm Roberts.
Not Norm. Joe Dooley for like 1 season at East Carolina. It's wild. You've got Baylor's Tang and McCaslin and Mills. Brooks is getting a promotion, essentially. That's pretty crazy. Also, a couple of other notes real quick. A future Big 12 team, Arizona. They added Trey Townsend today, who starred at Oakland. Team that, of course, beat Kentucky in the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, if you watched the tournament when it wasn't Jack Golke making an impossible 3-pointer, it was Trey Townsend scoring however he wanted to score for Oakland in both of their tournament games. He was the conference player of the year. He's really good.
Yeah, really, really fun player. So that is the selection of biggest news today from college basketball, along with the news we already got to. RJ Jones from K-State to the portal. Arthur Kaluma is entering the NBA draft. And Labaron Philon, number 32 prospect in the country. He is asked out of his national letter of intent from Kansas. That I don't think I'm surprising anyone by saying that's going to happen.
Final headline of the day. Spencer, hit the music.
Oh, we're home.
No!
Oh.
Here we go.
It's time for the 580 Sports Talk Playoff Roundup.
That first whip really gets you.
Wasn't ready because I had to change the legal ID at the end of last night.
Okay. You gotta
Excuses.
stay ready so you don't have to get ready. It's playoff roundup here on 580 Sports Talk. We finally had some road winners in the NBA last night, as both Indiana and Dallas won on the road at Milwaukee and at the Clippers, respectively, to even those series. I watched a bunch of the end of the Dallas LA game. A gross rock fight. Luka Doncic like making line drive 30-foot 3-pointers. Deeply unpleasant game, deeply unpleasant series so far. But that series is tied at 1. Indiana racing past the Giannis-less Milwaukee Bucks. That series is tied at 1. No such luck for the miserable Phoenix Suns, who look like they're going to start breaking huddles with Cancun on 3. They have fallen behind the T-Wolves 2-0. Just 2 games tonight on the hardwood. Both 1 seeds are in action. Boston and Oklahoma City looking for 2-0 series advantages against the Heat and the Pelicans.
respectively. On Frozen Pond last night, the Florida Panthers and New York Rangers took 2-0 series leads in the East, pair of one-goal victories there. Panthers needed overtime to beat the Lightning. Rangers with a 4-3 win over the Capitals. While in the Western Conference, Nashville and Colorado scored road wins in their Game 2s to even their series against Vancouver and Winnipeg, respectively. Tonight, Game 3 in Toronto, the Bruins and Leafs tied at 1 apiece. Game 2s out west in the Dallas, Vegas, and Edmonton, Los Angeles series. We go now to a vibe check. Spencer Dupuis, your Caps are down 2-0. You weren't happy about the officiating last night.
Yeah.
Briefly explain.
All right. There is an elbow to the face, to the head neck area of TJ Oshie, and he was actually taken out of the game by they have independent people that watch like the NFL.
Yeah.
He was taken out of the game to get evaluated, but they didn't call it a penalty. Make that make sense. Also, Ovechkin is getting lazy. We've known that. He's an offensive player, not a defensive player, but you can't give up a shorthanded goal like he did last night, being lazy, getting the puck on the far side. Optimism. In 2018, the Capitals were down 2-0 in the series to the Columbus Blue Jackets in the first round, and I don't have to say what happened after that. They did have a goalie change back to Braden Holtby, so maybe they're going to go
for those who do not follow
back to
hockey
Darcy
as
Kemper.
Closely as Spencer and I do, what happened in 2018 was the Capitals won.
They won.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
just to be clear.
they went from who's the other goalie? I can't remember now. To Braden Holtby, and maybe the Caps go to Darcy Kemper this time around.
Hey, he's won a
Your
cup.
boy.
My boy.
Yeah.
Darcy.
So
I did not know that's where
we
he
have to
ended
wait
up.
till Friday, though. That's the sad part. We have to wait till Friday.
Two days off in that series for Game 3. Vibe check for yours truly. I owe Alexander Georgiev an apology because that young man balled out last night in goal for the Avalanche. Not just like good enough to win, genuinely good. Made the big saves. That's what you need from your goaltender, right, Spencer? Every now and again, you got to make a big save. There are some shots a goaltender can't do anything about. Every now and then, you got to make a big one. You got to stop somebody one-on-one. You got to kick away a deflected puck. You got to keep your team's chances of winning alive. I did not think Alexander Georgiev had that in him, and he had it in him last night, and the Avs have now put 10 goals. They had 11, all 11. No, just 10. They scored an empty netter last night. Let's do the math again. 10 goals past the likely Vezina Trophy winner, Connor Hellebuck, in this first-round series against Winnipeg. The Jets won the first game of their series last year, lost in 5. I wonder if they're feeling any deja vu on their flight back to Denver. Vibes are high in the Mile High City. Even the Rockies won last night.
Wow. Was there another eclipse by chance?
I couldn't tell you.
That'll do it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. Spencer Dupuis got you the rest of the way. The guys have you the rest
Send
of
in
this.
your AMS.
Yes, send in your Ask Me Anything questions to Spencer. Top City Metal Supply text line 785-272-9429, or you can drop them in on YouTube as well. I am out of here for the rest of the week. Dan's out for the rest of the day. Spencer will take you home on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk.
Welcome back to 580 Sports Talk here. It's a Wednesday, April 24th. Spencer Dupuis here for the Youngest in Charge movement, taking you the final 30-ish minutes here as we wrap things up. Brendan getting out for the weekend. Got to go catch a flight, and Dan just had something to do. So guess what? For first time solo hosting since I've been here. You got to start, 30 minutes, and you get a full show eventually. But a lot to talk about here. I'll take your questions for Ask Me Anything on the Top City Metal Supply. Text line 785-272-9429, 785-272-9429. Talks a little draft here. We had our mock drafts for the first round earlier today. You can go back on the YouTube later on or go to the podcast page, 580wibw.com, to find that in hour 2 after the show's done today. But interesting movements could happen as we go along with the Bengals. They might be willing to trade a player and move around. Who knows? We talked about that earlier on in headlines. Also, Cowboys exercised the 5th-year option on about the only guy in their defense, Micah Parsons. Not a shocker at all. But let's get in some Ask Me Anything questions here as we start things off in this final couple segments. First, we'll go to the Top City Metal Supply text line from earlier here. My favorite brand of hat / favorite hat. That is a great question. I have recently come into wearing more hats. Definitely wore hats before, but just on different occasions. This might be my favorite hat that I currently have. Mountaineer Media back in West Virginia. They hooked it up with their hat. Turn around, show the camera here. Shout out Mountaineer Media. CJ Harvey back in West Virginia. That would be my favorite hat right now. I'm getting a hat tomorrow that's coming in the mail. So I'll probably wear it Friday, depending on how long the show is. You might be able to see it then. But that is my favorite hat. If you have any more questions hit me up on the Top City Metal Supply text line 785-272-9429 as we get some more questions here from YouTube. In all fairness, let's go up a little bit here before I take the most recent one. Lenny Dawson, Tom Wilson, yes, he does, but he has served suspensions for that and been fined for that. The Rangers might be a better team. But it was 2-2 the series in the regular season, so I don't think a lot. The Capitals could have a better team. They're older. I don't think this is their year personally, but again, who knows? Hockey's hockey. Anything can happen. They didn't look like it the last 2 games, but I think the last game, a little momentum. If Ovechkin can not be lazy and get more shots, I think they have a chance in game 3 Friday. My music list it involves a lot of country music. Big Luke Combs fan, going to his concert for the 2nd year in a row this summer. But we'll just take a look at my Spotify. How about the Spotify repeat? So we got some Luke Combs. Local Kansas artist Chase Holton has a song Next to Nowhere. That's a good song out there. Bailey Zimmerman, Jelly Roll, the Hicks tape, Diff tape, basically Joe Diffie remembrance album. Great album if you haven't checked it out. Chris Stapleton on there, Big Zach Bryan, Noah Khan, Dylan Scott guy. Some Eric Church in there as well. Dylan Marlowe, Dylan Scott have a Boys Back Home song that's a little catchy, not a big, not too big on it, but it's very catchy. That one coming from Jason. That's my music list right now. It changes as the weeks go by. I dabble in every kind of music you can think of. Used to be big in rap. I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. Pretty big in rap back in the day as I went back and looked at a time capsule. Not as big now, but do throw on some rap from time to time. Let's see what another one we got here. Mark on YouTube asks what my favorite movie of all time is. I'm not a big movie buff, honestly. I did like Top Gun Maverick. That was a great question, or that was a great movie. I did really like that. I've watched it quite a few times. Big show guy, big TV show guy. a big kind of like procedural show guy, I guess, like Cop Show, big Chicago PD fan, big fan of NCIS. Was a big fan of shows that have ended. Burn Notice, that's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. CSI Miami, those kind of shows are my favorite kind of shows. Who was my sports hero growing up? Probably Chris Cooley, only because I've met him a few times. Jason's with that question on YouTube. Coke. I'm a Coca-Cola guy through and through. McDonald's Coke is the elitist Coke of all time, unless you're talking about in the glass bottle. That is probably the best Coke. That one coming from Vance. Couple more here before we talk some draft. In my brief time, this coming from Paul, in my brief time in Topeka, have I discovered a favorite thing to do, place to eat? Yeah, few places to eat. Johnny's Tavern. I like that place. Been there a few times. Haven't really ventured out as much doing anything. But definitely plan to do it this summer. I think the Chiefs' biggest need, Lenny Dawson here, their biggest need, I think, is got to be left tackle. They don't really have their starting left tackle on the roster right now. If you're talking about the first round pick, they do have Hollywood Brown. Yes, he's a 1-year guy right now, and it appears that's all he's going to be, because the way that Brett Veach talked about last Friday in his presser, he said wanting him to have a good season and have that help his career. So I think you get a receiver. It all depends on the draft, obviously, how it's going to flow. I think that's a big thing to this. Yes, I think they need a left tackle, but I think they're going to select a receiver because of the receiver depth that's going to be on the board at 32. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they traded up in the draft at this point. Again, anything can change. I don't have them trading up, but I believe Dan's mock draft had them trading up, and I think he had him get, who do you have him get? Let me pop back over here. He had him get wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. From LSU, trading with the Cowboys. So I'm not too sure there. There's a chance they move up, but obviously things change daily in the draft. And he said they did have 16 guys that kind of were their top guys. So it's all going to depend where things play out. I do think they need a left tackle, but they do have Donovan Smith. I mean, they can call him up, sign him to another 1-year deal, kick the can down the road for another year. That could be a possibility. Jason in the YouTube comments. Okay, everyone, we need to recruit more subscribers on here now that Brendan is gone for a few days. Yes, let's continue that. We'll get an update here, a live update on our YouTube subscribers. It's at 482. We've gained a subscriber since they've left. So let's keep that going. I'm excited to see how many we can get before Monday. Lenny, I get you say Top Gun was phony. I understand. Just the action. I think it was a good acting movie. It had a bunch of great scenes in it. Yeah, maybe not depicted properly, but it's not really depicted to be, one of those 100% true movies like a documentary or something. There's a burger question from Vance a little ways up. Let me go find that here. None of the above. Not a McDonald's Quarter Pounder, not a Burger King Whopper, or a Wendy's Big Bacon Classic. I would say a McDouble from McDonald's or a Baconator from Wendy's. We got some other text coming in here. We got some 4 straight text here. From the 785, if I could bring one thing from West Virginia to Topeka, what would it be? That's a great question. The mountains. I love the mountains. It's very flat here in Kansas. That's something I would bring to Topeka. Also, big bourbon guy. I'd bring my favorite distillery, Black Draft Distillery in Martinsburg, because it's hard to get their bourbon. That I'm so far away. Another coming from the 785. Barbecue sides. It'd be fried. No, it would be mac and cheese or potato salad. I think, yeah. 913 says RC Cola rules. I did have one at the Big 12 tournament because that's one of their corporate sponsors. So, yeah. Do I miss this from the 913? Do I miss getting honked at and flipped off from back east? Welcome. You'll like Midwest people. I never really got flipped off or honked at. I did a lot of honking because people weren't paying attention there on their phones too much back in the DMV area. Let's talk a little bit more draft here as we go back, look at my mock draft for the first round here. I think I'm going to actually maybe do a second round or two just to see where things fall. But I really do think, your top four is set. I think the Commanders are going to go with Jaden Daniels, and that's the safe pick there. I think Drake May, obviously, you had Sam Howell from UNC on your roster before, and you just traded him to the Seahawks because your new regime doesn't think he can be a franchise quarterback. And UNC just doesn't have luck having franchise quarterbacks. If you look at LSU, the pedigree, with Joe Burrow, that just makes me think. There's a lot of questions surrounding him. Brennan doesn't like him. I just think Jaden Daniels is going to be the best fit for Washington. But truly, they might not even have decided yet. Quite honestly, they might have not decided yet, just based upon what the visit they did last week at Topgolf with multiple quarterbacks. Wild card, I'd like to see JJ McCarthy to the Commanders, but he's not going number 2 overall. I think you could see Chicago trade back out of their pick unless, as I said, the Falcons trade with the Vikings for JJ McCarthy to get going. I think it's interesting that Bo Nix and Michael Penix, I've shut them out of the first round. Teams could pick them, but do they want to in the first round? I don't know. And Brandon brought up a good point. If you're taking a look at guys you can give a 5th-year option to make sure that they're really who you want as another year of evaluation, that could be a point for a team to go pick a Bo Nix, a Michael Penix, maybe come back into the first round in the mid-20s. Who knows? I do think this year's cornerback class can be pretty good. Initially, I was kind of about putting Terrion Arnold up to the Broncos when there's some other guys in there, like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Nate Wiggins, Quinyon Mitchell. But I think he could be a good cornerback. The wide receiver is an interesting position. Obviously, your top wide receiver going most likely 4 overall to the Cardinals. They need to see if Kyler Murray can pair with an elite wide receiver to see if he can be the guy for them. But below that, you have Malik Neighbors. Then you have Rome Odunze. Those guys are 1A, 1B for me. But after that, Brian Thomas Jr. worked with, obviously, Jaden Daniels at LSU. He could be a good prospect. But A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey are all guys I think are in the mix, depending on if there's a run on wide receivers. Maybe you see, a team like the Falcons. They had got Rome Odunze, but maybe you see them not going with wide receiver and that receiver being open to somebody else. I think it all depends on obviously where things go. I have Brock Bowers falling to 18, be a steal for Joe Burrow to get him. That could be huge. I think in addition for Joe Burrow, an elite pass catcher at the tight end position. And if they can work out something to keep T Higgins there, obviously, if not, maybe you trade him in the draft. And I don't know. You don't have very many options. I think it's going to be hard to trade Trey Hendrickson with his $6 or $15 million this season unless you split it. That will be something to look at. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry and Nate Wiggins, they're kind of interchangeable. That's why I have them at 25, 26 in my mock draft. I had seen Kool-Aid McKinstry mocked all the way down to 30 to the Ravens. I don't know. But going back to receiver, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, they're all going to be in the mix for the Chiefs if they do indeed stay at that pick. Let's get some last minute Ask Me Anything questions here. Who will be the first Jayhawk picked in this draft? For the sake of the texters, I think Ben Sinnott will be the first Jayhawk picked in this year's draft. And the texters would love it if he goes in round 2 and to the Chiefs. So maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. Let's check here. Vance, you make a good point. Burnett's Mound. I need to go to Burnett's Mound. Definitely pretty close to where I reside, so definitely need to check that out at some point. Let's see. It's a little way. Okay. Jason responds to Vance's question and says Wendy's burgers. I need to try the burger bus. That's what I need to try. And shout out 785. I was thinking somebody said first Wildcat taken, not Jayhawk taken. That's my fault here, but we've got to hit our second to last break here when we come back. Maybe a few more questions, and then we'll talk a little Royals Blue Jays as they get set for first pitch tonight here in about 50 minutes. We'll be back after this break on 580 WIBW. Welcome back to 580 Sports Talk. Spencer Dupuy hanging out with you here as Brendan and Dan had to depart early for the day here. Quick answers to Ask Me Anything here as who do I think from the Jayhawks will be drafted first? I think it's going to be Dominic Pooney, third, maybe fourth round. But again, Austin Booker the defensive lineman, he also has a grade right around there as well. So it's kind of a toss-up for which one of those two guys will be drafted in what position as the first Jayhawk off the board. Also, another one from the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. Favorite city in West Virginia? That's easy. Fayetteville, the New River Gorge. It's now a national park. Great. One of my favorite things about West Virginia is just the mountains, and that goes to show it right there. We got to get into a quick Royals preview from the Royals Radio Network. Will be up here as game 3 is set for tonight at 6:40. We'll hand it over here in just about 7 minutes to the great folks at the Royals Radio Network. Alec Marsh on the mound tonight. Good season so far for Alec Marsh. We'll get into the starting lineup. Miguel Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino is your first 3. Floral is Salvador Perez. Catching in left field is MJ Melendez. DHing tonight is Velasquez. Frazier at second base tonight. Renfroe in right. And Isbell playing center to round out the lineup. Again, you can listen right here on 580 WIBW, the Royals Radio Network. We'll take over here in about 6 minutes as we wrap up today's show. Again, if you have any other questions, hit us on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. As we get you ready to go here for Royals baseball. Obviously, a big win for them last night. Not the best win that you could possibly have if you're the Royals, but a much needed win to get off of the 3-game skid. And the positives you keep seeing for the bullpen are something that you can take forward. You need to get more hits with runners in scoring position. Even after the game, Matt Quatrero said, if it wasn't for Bobby Witt Jr. and it wasn't for that error previously, they would probably be playing or they would have lost. So that was big in last night's game. You need to be able to overcome things. And going back to that article that Bradford Doolittle wrote for ESPN, which you can go, it's on the free side. They're definitely a great article. I would read that if I were you. The starting pitchers have lacked these last couple of days, but that happens. You're not going to be on 100% of the time. The Royals again, 6:40 against the Blue Jays for game 3. We'll hand it over to the the Royals Radio Network after we're done here, but it'll be a 6 o'clock pregame, 6:40 first pitch. We'll do right now is we'll step aside for our final break of the day. When we come back, I'll get your final word and we'll get you out of here on 580 Sports Talk. We wrap things up here on a Wednesday, one day before the NFL draft. A lot of things are smoke when it comes to the NFL draft, but I don't think it's smoke that we're going to see 1, 2, 3, and 4 go Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that'll be your top 4 in the draft. I do think the Vikings come up in somewhere in 5 through 8 to get 5 through 8 to get JJ McCarthy. I think he can be a good quarterback in the NFL, but that will do it here for us on 580 Sports Talk. For Brendan Dorzinski, for Dan Lucero, I'm Spencer Dupuis saying so long. We'll be back for a short show after the Royals game tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night, everyone.